right, we're recording, and it is now season 2, Ep 1. Gary and I are back in the saddle again.
Amazing. I feel like it's been a long time.
It
I'm
has
sure the
been
people
a
at
long
home
time.
think so.
It has been
it
a long
has.
time.
That's why.
It's not like we actually recorded this months ago.
No, I assume we'll get this up quick and
But we've been busy. We've had a lot of projects. I'm sure we'll get into all of that as the season progresses and have many more random talks about different things in cars. But today we're going to have Mr. Carlson on.
I'm so pumped. So pumped.
It's good. Yeah, I feel like he's impacted not only, my career, your career more than we both know, but at the same time, just I would say our industry in totality. And now, more and more as time goes on, the full automotive business in its totality.
Yeah, and just one of just the nicest guys one of the nicest guys I know. One of the guys you always want on your team for anything you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to be a blast. And I think to start off, let's get some demo tracks out of the way. I feel like they've been hanging on the edge for a while here, and a lot of people are asking for more.
I have got a lot of people asking. So let's run through what we have on our demo list right now, which is Devil's Story from the Gadabouts, Isn't She Lovely from Livingston Taylor, Lullaby for a Stormy Night from Vienna Tang. I believe that might have been a Brian Mitchell ad there.
Okay.
Next one is You For Sure, Susie Blue from Ben Harper, which I've started to use. Just so you guys know, I use this playlist on Spotify all the time when I'm testing out systems now. I have my own list, which I've been pulling from to add to here, but now I've just been going right to this list. Seven Nation Army, which is Postmodern Jukebox. And Make Us Stronger from Ghost Rider. I believe that's you. Temptation from Diana Krall, which I added.
You said that's the first song I always play.
Yep.
Always for the past 6 years.
And then The Wheel from, I don't even know how to pronounce it.
I think it's Shown, but it's a man.
Shown.
It sounds like a woman because he sings in falsetto most of the time.
Sohn is how you spell it.
Yes, Sohn. Yep.
So you got something picked out already? Are you thinking about it, or something you've been using lately?
I'm navigating through, and obviously I'm trying to stay away from anything that's the least bit cliche, right? And I know that it's a long season, so I know that I don't have to be picky right now. So I'm just going to start naming some random shit that is different. I don't even know if you're going to be able to find this one, but I wouldn't say that it's like a demo track per se, but it's something that is really cool in the sense of seeing like the space and room size. It's just a really interesting listen. I feel like
I know what you're going to say.
You definitely don't. I will send you a 15-year Whistle Pig aged bottle of whiskey if you even got this.
If I have this on one of my playlists.
You don't. I feel like right now you have to type it in your phone and then show it to me right after I say it for me to even believe you. Because there's no way that you're even going to pull this. I don't think really anyone's ever even heard this before. And I will say, I'm just going to preface it and say, when everything starts happening, the song completely falls off the rails. But the first 20 seconds as the shit's happening, it's really cool. Okay?
All right.
So the song is called Bubbles.
It's on my playlist.
You're way off. No, it's not.
Huh? I swear to you. Hold on. We may have to edit this out for time. I'm going to go in. I got to show because Matt can see my phone. Here's my phone. Okay. So it's not on my main playlist, but it is on one of my playlists.
By Yoshi Horikawa?
Yeah.
Really?
And there's another one called Letters. I have these. Don't. I told you I knew what it was as soon as you started talking. Here it is.
I am not buying you a 15-year-old.
You are too. Right there. It's right there. It says Bubbles. Oh, hold on. Let me go back.
Yeah.
It's on my playlist.
Way. Hold on. Just to
I'm
be fair,
screenshotting my playlist.
That's great, but there's no way that you were
Where's
thinking
my bottle? I'm not joking. It's literally right in here between this playlist, which is called Final Demo. It's in between Seven Nation Army, which I've given on here, and Tundra from Amber Rubarth, which is another great track. I guess that might be my track this week. But Bubbles is on my playlist. I told you I knew exactly what you're talking about as soon as you started talking about it. And it is great. It is so much fun.
It's fun until like all the stuff starts happening at once, and it just kind of falls off the rails for me. Like when everything just starts going like from every direction, right? Because it starts off with like a ball drop, like a ball bouncing, then like a marble dropping, and they're at different spaces on the dashboard, and then like 1,000 things start dropping. Yeah. Yeah, and then everything starts just going spastic.
That actually works pretty good. I hope we don't get nailed for like copyright infringement on the podcast or something there. Oh,
that's kind of amazing. I still don't know for sure if that's the exact track that you were thinking of. I think you're thinking of something different.
No.
All right.
I'm telling you, it's on my Final Demo playlist. I'll send you that screenshot that I just took. Oh, it's so funny. Okay, so I guess it's on to me. Let me go back because I'm gonna pull something out of my main. I have that was Final Demo playlist that was on. I have a newer one that I use. It's called New Demo List, and I am gonna go down. I am gonna pull one out that my wife showed to me. The band is Spoon, and the song is called Everything Hits at Once. And it's what I like about it is that it's not an overly demo track. Like Bubbles is definitely a track you put on to show off your system and all that kind of stuff. This is normal music. This is my wife's favorite band is Spoon, and Everything Hits at Once just has this it's this gated drum on it that's just it's tight, it's fast, it's accurate, and it really shows off a system that's got great mid bass, and it's just a lot of fun to listen to. So I really like it, and it's just good normal music, not something that's overly engineered or overly thought about. And yeah, I'm just so excited. I knew what you were talking about. Like I can't get it. I'm so jazzed.
I can't even. Yeah, I can't
so
even
jazzed.
believe that. I don't even know where I originally heard that. I just thought it was like some random thing that I stumbled upon years ago. That I'm just like, nobody's ever heard this but me.
I know who played it for me and who showed it to me. I don't know if you know him, Chris Tagoo from Alpine.
Yeah,
he has. He does a lot of their demo videos and that kind of stuff. And yeah,
interesting.
Did you see the big launch from Alpine this week? Press releases going out and everything.
I did.
For new F1 status and a partnership with Astil and Kern for the music player part of it. Should be pretty interesting.
And then, did you ever listen to any of the NPR recordings?
I did. I sat on the couch and listened to probably 8, 9 of them. I was just watching on my laptop. I didn't really have a good way to do it through the big TV, so I just watched them on my laptop and played with it. It's fun. It's definitely fun.
Yeah, I would say that anytime that I'm demoing, AMAS or anything from the phone, any kind of Bluetooth streaming, I'll throw the phone on the dashboard where the center channel would be, and it shows like proof of concept of the soundstage, right?
Yep.
And obviously there's a few recordings that are just way better than others, and specifically like the Leon Bridges one is probably my favorite. He's got a fucking fantastic voice. It's super authentic, and it's a shame because his album sounds nothing like his recording on NPR, right? NPR, it's like super crystal clear and just full of body, and in his album it's just like he made it old school, so there's like all this noise in the track. It's just disgusting.
Interesting.
But the NPR recording is amazing. The Alicia Keys one, obviously when she does Fallen at the end, just because of how theatrical it is, and then the entire crowd kicks in at the end is really, really cool. And I would say it's one of the most emotional ones. So if you're listening to it on a good speaker set that has like an emotional feel to it, when you're done watching that, you will legit feel like you just watched it in person, right? You're going to feel like you were there.
How many are there? Because
there's hundreds.
Okay, I was going through NPR's website when I was watching them, and I was just like scrolling down. I'm like I was getting lost. And this was all, I didn't even make it through all of, just even scrolling through all of the ones that were during, we'll just say COVID times where it was people recording in their house.
Yeah,
I didn't even get to any of the original stuff yet.
Yeah, so you got to get to the originals. The originals are better because the ones in the houses are kind of like overproduced. So it's kind of how you expect. But when you're listening to them actually in the NPR studio, which is like a tiny desk library, just when you're explaining to a customer about the soundstage and discerning the audio as the room that they're in, right? You can tell they're in this tiny room. You can tell that they're in a library based on the acoustics of the vocals. It translates to the car, and it makes it a really fun, interactive demo that shows proof of concept for what it is you're trying to sell, right? You're trying to sell the soundstage and believability and doing exactly how it's recorded. And when they can see that, they can correlate everything with what they're seeing. So it's been like one of the most key factors of part of the demo for people to understand that, holy shit, yeah, you know, they're singing here and the guy with the trumpet is like 3 feet away to the left, and you can hear that in the car, you know? So obviously if it's wrong, it's obvious it's wrong. But obviously when it's right, it's like, wow, this is incredible. I've never experienced something like this in a car before.
Cool. Well, we need to get to Jeremy as he's patiently waiting. And I am super excited for this season. We got a lot of cool stuff. I even have a surprise for you that I don't know that you know about yet. I bought a new car. Not a new car. I bought a used car that's getting a full...
There's so much to talk about.
A full build that we'll get to kind of go over and design a little together and talk about.
Oh my God, I'm so excited now.
A couple of fun things, yeah. So and then
and I will say we haven't really talked for almost months.
Well, I mean a few quick things here and there,
but we haven't caught up.
Yeah, no.
At all.
So I'm super excited for this. I'm super excited to have Jeremy on, again, one of our really good friends and from our tight knit group of people, and somebody that's just really cool and well respected in the industry, and hopefully has some cool stories for us. And and then next week we'll get back to getting caught up between you and I.
Yeah,
we'll get these tracks on the playlist and get to it. Welcome to season 2, everybody.
All right, let's go.
Yep. And here's Jeremy.
That's life. That's life. That's what all the people say. You're riding high in April, shot down in May. But I know I'm gonna change that tune when I'm back on top in June. I said that's life.
Okay.
Don't laugh, just do it.
So we're live. We are live. I see it's recording. We're already 10 seconds in, and nobody knows who the guest is yet. Well, actually they do because they've already clicked on the title. So it's Jeremy Carlson. He's obviously no stranger to, I would say, the car industry, not even just 12-volt electronics. It's pretty much you've tackled everything at this point, and soon I'm sure there's going to be more and more things that will come out of, I guess, where your career is going to go. So, yay, Jeremy Carlson's here.
Hey guys,
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm waited until season 2 here, so we will see where this goes tonight.
Yeah, and just to preface it,
kickoff.
you know, we talked in season 1 about Carlson sending us some Live Oak, which is the sonically made whiskey. As you can see, my bottle's gone, but I can assure you I saved enough for one old fashioned, which saving it for you. So
Very cool.
I wasn't going to go through the whole bottle without obviously enjoying at least one beverage with you.
So how was it?
It's good. I like it.
Is it? Not
Yeah.
bad?
Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's signed, of course, by the I guess the people.
That's the two owners, I
distill
believe.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, just of course coming down to details of trying to find it's local. It's Tallahassee, right?
No, Jacksonville.
Okay, yeah, Jacksonville.
So
of
Charles Brazil, who I hired recently, as most of you know, when I was telling him I was going to be on the podcast, he was like, "Hey, 2 doors down, they're making this whiskey that is just like you said, made with basically curing with subwoofers or however it works
Yeah.
for the you whiskey people." But I was like, "Well, shit, that's really cool because that allows us to tie in whiskey and car audio, obviously." So I thought that was a cool thing to send you. So that's why we started with that.
Yeah, of course, never lost with details.
I'm gonna try it for the first time since I saved my bottle, Matt,
Yeah,
for this
I got
very
into
special
a point
moment
and a
here.
pinch where I had to start drinking it.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's supposedly sold in our Total Wines and our big liquor stores down here. It's starting to get really popular around the state of Florida. So we'll see where they go with it and how they do with it. So, all right, where are we going to go tonight, boys? Where are we going to start?
Well,
Man.
let's go back to the beginning, to that gleam in your mother's eye. No, not quite that far. Not quite that far.
That might be a different podcast.
Yeah, definitely.
That'll be the After Hours podcast.
Right, there you go. And tell us how it all started for you. Tell us how you got into this.
This is interesting because I don't know this story. I know.
Well, I mean, he
bits
did
and
send us
pieces,
a
but
bio that we didn't read, and we could have read up and researched on this guy before we just had him on. But.
Well, I guess let's just go back to the beginning.
Let me guess. It started with a subwoofer, like everyone else says.
No, I think it started more on the fabrication side. I grew up in Salina, Kansas, and a lot of my friends had older brothers that had, cool cars and car stereos back then. And at the time, I had a little shed in our backyard, and I had a little lathe. My grandpa gave me a lathe, and I was making little baseball bats and putting things on the end to make key rings out of them. And I was selling them at my high school so that I could make money my parents didn't know about. And it started there, and then some of my friends' brothers said, "Hey, I know you got the woodworking equipment, but can you help me build a subwoofer enclosure?" And I was like, sure, whatever. And so I built this, I'm sure it was a piece of crap subwoofer enclosure out of some particle board my dad had. And I will tell you that within the first 3 that I built, one of them was built by taking apart my ping pong table and using the 1/2-inch particle board off my ping pong table because we were in a pinch. So that started in my parents' garage as well. But so it all goes back to in the garage and just using my fabrication skills that my grandfathers gave me and making the little baseball bats and then making little pieces of furniture and coffee tables. And that was in 1993, and I was a junior in high school. And that summer, I got my first car, or I had my car, I can't quite remember, and I had a little Honda CRX and put a little system in it with my friend's brother's help because I didn't know what the heck I was doing, obviously, back then. And that car got totaled by my girlfriend at the time, and I got a Camaro, 84 Camaro, and that's where my career really started. It was when I got my own car, and a car that I could actually, by this time I think I was into my junior year, if not my junior summer, right before my senior year in high school, and I had some money. I had worked at two other places in my life still, and that's still true to this day. I've only had 2 other jobs besides car audio or fabrication. So I remember getting an Eclipse radio, single DIN, and I don't remember, I think it was an Alpine amp or something, but if you remember back then, the big in the back of those hatches, they had like you could put a baffle across it on like 1.8, and it sounded like 312s, because the acoustics of the car. So I do know that first baffle did have some ping pong table in it as well. I remember the green side up, and it was horrible. I didn't know what the heck I was doing when it came to sound. I didn't understand why it needed to be rigid. I didn't understand any of that. But the more that I would try to learn by going to the local car audio shops, there was a local shop called Dell's Electronics there in town, and they were reluctant to really help, I would say. But they did have an installer that if I went out to the bay as I was leaving, he would give me some pointers or throw me some wire here and there if I needed it. And so my best friend, his name was Jamie Adcock, and we will skip over the details, but I did lose him his senior year in college to a motorcycle accident. But he was my best friend through basically grade school and then high school and then college. But we had a little business, and I still got the little business cards. It was J&J, Jeremy and Jamie, audio. And my senior year, we started putting people's systems in. He was more the wiring guy, and I was more the fabrication guy. So starting my senior year, I was able to do an internship at a local car audio shop, Precision Sound in Salina. The owner was Brian Feltz, and so you'll have to dig deep, but I can send you some articles as well. But Brian at the time was building an Eagle Talon and competing in Iasca, and I believe some local USAC shows. That's before USAC really got started. And the more time I would go by there and grab wire or grab whatever I needed to work on my own garage right before that started, he was the guy who would always like give me like the extra 10 minutes or the extra 5 minutes to explain this or explain that and explain what crossovers were. And I remember one day going in there, and he handed me a relay. He said, "You know what one of these are?" And I said, "Not really." He goes, "All right." And he gave me, I don't know if you guys remember, Gary may remember the old Bosch book that it gave all the different configuration of relays. He gave me a relay, a Bosch book, a power supply, a pair of crimpers and wire, and a switch, and told me to go home and figure out how to use it.
So did you give him any fabrication tools and tell him to figure out how to use it?
I did not. He was doing it very okay on his own. Brian is a super talented fab guy. I learned a ton from him, and he agreed to let me do my internship there. I think what it really excited me about going there was this Eagle Talon he was building. So it had a pair of focal sixes in each door, and it had horns, and it had the original symmetry in it, which had the big cards. Remember that, Gary?
Yep.
It looked like a big PC basically, and you slid in different DSP cards to it, and custom bent neon from the local neon shop, and matching vinyl for the car, and motorized back seat, and battery cover under the hood. And you could go through the Iasca checklist at the time and just check off creativity points and get all your points for covering your battery terminal or the fuse being within 18 inches of the battery. And so that's what really sparked everything. It got me out of high school for half a day, my senior year, and it allowed me to, I guess, follow my passion that I didn't know was a passion at the time. And that was taking what I already knew, what I thought I knew on the fabrication side, and apply it to something that had a reason now or somewhere, a drive to go towards, because both my grandfathers were carpenters, plumbers and carpenters. My sophomore, junior, and part of my senior year, I had built 3 or 4 houses with my now ex-girlfriend's father. I learned a ton there, and then I finished up my senior year high school with my internship, and I moved to Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas for my freshman year in college. Went through their program there for construction science. So at that point, I wanted to, be in the construction business and kind of follow after my grandfathers. but I wanted to be more on the estimating side and the management side than the busting your butt every day and your back every day side of it. So as I went through the school, and I think it was a 24-month program. It was a 2-year program. At the end of the program, my instructor called me in his office, and he wanted to know if I was interested in coming back and taking his job. He said that I had more passion and more drive than anybody's ever came through that class, and seemed like I had a straight head on my shoulders, and the school needed somebody young like me, and he would be willing to stay on for 2 years, and then I could take over as director of the construction department of that school. And by that time, I gracefully said no. I knew that I needed to do something besides construction, and so those 2 years I spent there, I was working at a local shop called Audio Junction in the evenings and the weekends. And Audio Junction, they had a store in Junction City, Kansas, which is on Fort Riley military base. And back then, so that would have been 1995, back then, car audio was booming, as Gary will probably know. Matt was probably maybe middle school.
What year?
95. Yeah. So not only was car audio just booming back then, but now we're on a military base and the soldiers are all coming back and spending money after money after money. So this allowed me to learn more of the technical side of car audio. I learned the wiring, the alarms, proper way to do this, proper way to do that. So now I'm kind of tying in my fabrication side I've learned for the last 2 years in with the technical side, and kind of made me a really all-around installer. I met at Audio Junction a guy named Mike Malik, and he went by the Eagle. And so they were building 3 or 4, the Eagle, yeah, because he is so sharp. And I still speak to him today.
I wish I had a cool nickname like that.
Yeah, I can't think of any other cooler name of people I've known along the way, because it fits him so well. So Mike and the rest of the crew there were building 3 cars for USAC and IASCA at the time. So you have to remember, back in '95, especially in the Midwest, I'm not sure where you were, Gary, but in the Midwest, USAC and IASCA were huge. You know, our store, we would have a local, just IASCA, and we'd have, 40, 60, 80 cars some shows, 100 cars some shows. People were driving for a state and a half or 2 states away just to come get regular points, because it wasn't a double point show, a triple point show. It was just a normal show. But back then, IASCA, you had to have so many points throughout the year to be able to go to finals. So if you didn't have that many points, you weren't going to finals. It wasn't like you just got an automatic invitation. So people were always just traveling to get all the points they could. And so I was, if I was a fish in the water, I got hooked. Somebody reeled me in, and that's what it was. It was the fabrication, and then the wiring, and then the competition side of it. And once I got into the competition side of it, and I met the Eagle, he's the one that truly gave me a passion for sound. Probably one of the smartest guys that I know today, that I've had the chance to work with anyway, when it comes to just knowing about acoustic and knowing about sound, and could literally take anything that he could read anywhere about acoustics in a studio and try to apply them in a car. We were trying crazy things back then. We had a 2 10W, what would they have been back there? Ones maybe? I don't remember what they were. In a bandpass enclosure under the rear deck of this Sable we were building. And so it had a big port in the center of the rear deck. And then right above the port in the headliner, he found this acoustical thing that goes on a ceiling. It was probably like 3 foot long and 2 foot wide. It had all these different angles on it. And it was just to break up the waves coming right out of that port.
Love it.
There was all kinds of absorption materials he was finding I've never even heard of before. And I will tell you one of them now, and you'll probably have to cut this clip out if you want to, but we used to get, I think it was maybe from Focal back then, or the Black Hole or somebody, but they made these round pads, and they may still make them today. So basically like a 6 or 8 or 10-inch rubber pad, and they have like grooves on them that got smaller as they came in through the diameter of them.
Deflex panels, yeah.
Yeah, so we called them Shark Pussy, and I'm not sure why. That was just the name of them. But this is the type of stuff that I was just soaking up, you know. Of course, back then we didn't have the internet, and so we weren't just going to go Google acoustical panels for cars or whatever it was. It was a matter of reading books and magazines and trying things out of other industries. And then I started learning about time alignment and DSPs. We had the original Sony ES processor and the amplifiers in the Sable, and we had a rep fly in from California and helped us tune this thing, and it just kept going from there. We had once I was there for a year, we opened a second store in Manhattan, Kansas, and that's actually where Kansas State is, and it's about a 25-minute drive. So I helped build the second store. I helped build all the displays, and as we were doing regular installs as well. But so now we had 2 stores, and we were getting much bigger. So we had like demo cars back then. You have to remember demo cars were huge. We had the PPI Astro vans come through. I remember there was a Sedona PPI van. There was an Art Series PPI van. I don't remember the other one, I believe, but now they were leaving me a van for a week, and I rebuilt the whole back of the PPI demo van for the country in that week. And so, and here I am working at 2 or 3 in the morning for a week straight to get ready for this show that the reps can take around to the rest of the country. But in return, he gave me a PPI watch that was worth about $8 probably, But back then I was like, man, look at this, I got a PPI watch, So, and so there it was. That was the passion. So while working at Audio Junction, this had to bring us up to like late 96 now or 97. I attended the very first Knowledge Fest of all time. It was in Lake of the Ozarks, and it was in 1996, so it had to be 96 as we speak here. I went with the guys from Audio Junction. I think there was 5 of us that drove down there. It was about a 5 or 6 hour drive from where we were. And in the lobby that first night, probably similar to what's going on in Orlando right now this weekend, is I met another guy that was from a small shop in Lawrence, Kansas called University Audio. So that's for another day, but University Audio, Audio Junction, and another set of stores all used to be one chain before I went to work there. Somewhere along the line, each of the managers or each of the owners, they broke off, and then there was Audio Junction, there was University Audio, and there was another one. So everybody from our stores kind of knew each other because we had the owners that used to work together. So that's for another day. But so we walk in, we're sitting in this hotel, the resort in the Lake of the Ozarks, and I met their installer. His name was Ian Black, and I think Ian and I sat until 3 or 4 in the morning and sat on a couch in the lobby of this hotel, just talking about car audio and fabrication. Ian is still my best friend to these days. I talk to him every single day. If a week goes by and we haven't talked, it's probably only happened twice since 1996. He's just that guy. We had so much in common. Everything that we thought of or had thoughts of, the other one was finishing thoughts. It was like he was my brother from another mother, literally. So we get back from Lake of the Ozarks, and he tells me that he has a brand new Delta Unisol. And I said, that's cool. I said, well, I've got a brand new Astro van. And I had been working on a deal with Rockford at the time, and Chris Pate, our local rep, had given me 15-inch woofers and a bunch of amplifiers.
Your local rep was named Chris Pate?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
Yeah. Sorry, not Pate. Yeah. Chris Pace. P-A-C-E.
Okay.
Sorry, yes.
I was like, that's kind of ironic.
Yeah, it is ironic. That would have been ironic for sure. So I had worked on this before I went to that first Knowledge Fest, and I had just gotten the woofers in probably a week before Knowledge Fest. And so that was part of our discussion down there. when we first met Ian was what I was going to do, and I had a couple ideas. And so he had told me that he had worked at a cabinet shop for the last year or two as well, and he had learned AutoCAD. And I said, that's cool. He goes, I can help you draw a box and we can build it. And I'm like, all right. And
Did
so
you tell
this
me you
wasn't.
still had a half a ping pong table left that you could use?
I didn't, because I didn't think he'd still be friends with me probably at the time. But so we kind of hit it off, and like 3 days later, he calls me at Audio Junction one day and is like, "Hey, you want to build that thing?" I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I didn't know you're so ready to do it." And so he goes, "Well, I called in sick today, and I can call in sick tomorrow too. I just need you to go out to your van and start giving me some dimensions." And so, like, literally, he just took 2 days off work sick just to draw this enclosure, right? And so that next weekend, we went up there, and he had a full-size Dodge van, and we picked up, I think it was 16 sheets of 3/4 inch MDF, and came back and started building this hexagon enclosure. And so that is where our relationship or I should say friendship, really started. While being up there, he had another guy that came in and wanted to compete, so we built another car, competed in Iasca, and then my local town, Brian Feltz, who I did the internship through, had built an Integra at the time as well after I left and went to college, and he needed a car rebuilt, so we had 2 cars to build now for Iasca. The Integra, we won in 1997. We won Iasca finals in the pro class. SQ, I think it might 30. Gary, you can remember, correct me or something. Maybe 3.
It's probably 251 to 500.
No, it must have been the bigger class.
601 and up.
Yeah, it must have been a 601
or
up
maybe
class,
yeah, because it might have been 250 to 6 and then 601 and up.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Anyway,
they changed it a few times, but
right. So anyway, we won Iasca finals, and then the other car, the Accord we built, it won. It took like 3rd at USAC or 2nd USAC 2 or 3 years in a row. So our names are kind of getting more popular. We were when we won with the Integra, he was sponsored by MTX. And he was on the newly formed Thunder Force team back in the day, MTX Thunder Force team. And so in '97, we drove to Daytona Beach and to Spring Break Nationals and won Daytona with the first show we ever went to. And that's what kind of started the whole thing that season with winning finals. Then my mom and dad, we still lived in Salina, Kansas at the time. My mom, every year in the wintertime, would end up with pneumonia and get sick. And she had a disease called blebs. And blebs are basically little holes on your lungs. And it's hard for you to breathe, especially when it's super cold out. So the doctor told her, hey, this is the 3rd year in a row. You've kind of been in the hospital for over a month in the winter. And if you want to see another winter with your family, you're going to need to move to a warmer climate. So my parents called me one day and said, hey, the doctor told your mom that she has to move or she's not going to make it 5 years probably with her disease, and we're moving to Florida. And I was like, oh. So I'll skip a bunch of it there, but I had to make a decision in my life at 21 years old or 20 years old, whatever I was at the time, that I either had to go to Florida with my parents and be around my mom and my dad and pursue my career there, or get a phone call from Florida one day that my mom had passed away and I wasn't able to be there. And so I know both you know me personally, and you know that I'm pretty much a family guy, and that was instilled into me from when I was a kid. And so I made the decision to pack up my stuff with my parents and move to Florida. We moved to Cape Coral, Florida actually on my birthday, July 31st, 1997. We arrived in Cape Coral, Florida. And now I'm here with my parents back home again, and no job, no friends, nothing. Started looking around the yellow pages for car stereo
Yellow
shops.
Pages, love it.
For the
Yeah.
younger people at home, the Yellow Pages are like a printed version of the internet, where if you wanted to find a business, there was a book.
Correct. And you had to know alphabet, and you needed to know what letter came before the other letter.
Yeah.
You didn't just have Google.
Right.
So digging through the Yellow Pages, I found a shop called Sounds of Southwest Florida. Little did I know at the time that Sounds of Southwest Florida was one of the biggest car audio shops in the country. Not because they did the most cars, but physical size and money invested in the place. You walked in Sounds and it was all marble floors. They actually had the Sounds of Southwest Florida logo in marble in different colors when you walked in the floor. I walked in there and I was like, holy cow, this is another level, right? So they had a salesman there named Zach Abbas, which we still to this day employ Zach. He's our salesman at Extreme Performance, our sister company. Probably in the top 5 of the smartest audio guys I've ever met. He is definitely knows too much about it, and you're screwed if you ever try to tell him any different, because he'll just let you know why he's right. But I met Zach, and they didn't have any room for me to do any kind of fabrication, and honestly, I didn't know if I even belonged in a facility like that doing any kind of fabrication at the time. You remember I was only working on this little shop, and I only built these 2 little cars basically at the time in Kansas, and Kansas is a flyover state. It's not getting much popularity from being in magazines or anything like that at the time. So no, he didn't know me. Nobody knew me there. So they put me in sales to start with, and so here I am. I'm button-down shirts and my khaki pants every day. I was decent at sales because I knew the back side of the car audio. I knew the install side, and within a couple of weeks, Zach came to me. He's like, "Listen, you're doing great." He was actually my superior there. He was a sales manager, I believe. But you're doing great. But I know that you have a passion for install, and I can see that's where you belong. He goes, "We have a position in the back, and we want to move you back there." And so they said, "You're gonna be teaming up with a guy, and you'll do the high-end audio, and you'll do the wiring for it and some of the fabrication, and I'm sure you can learn." And I said, "Man, that's great." So so I'm sure that was around Christmas '97, I'm guessing, somewhere around there. I teamed up with a little guy in the back named Dave. He goes by the Fish Man usually, but so here I am at 21 years old, and my first real job in Florida as an installer. I get put beside one of the best fabricators of our time back then that I knew of because of magazines. And you remember back then he had just built the Streetwires Ram, and so I'm looking at him going, and that's truly where I would say, and I'm pretty humble, that I wouldn't say, I guess it would be popularity. My name started getting known because here I am going to these shows, and we're building these badass cars for these people that have all this motorization and fish tanks because of Fishman. And so at the time, it was the fish show, though. I mean, anybody who knows Fishman, I always tell everybody, there is the Fishman who goes to the shows and he puts on a show. He's the loud guy. He's the one who gets all the attention. He gets the mommies to come over and dance next to the cars. But on the flip side, I worked with David. I didn't work with the Fishman. I worked with David. Down to earth David, listens to salsa music and just works, So I got to know both sides of David. And honestly, I feel that, and he'd probably tell you the same thing if you can get him on this thing one of these nights, is that we truly learn from each other. Here I am, younger than him at the time, but I'm bringing more of the high-end audio fidelity to his high-end fabrication.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that worked well. We built a Jimmy. I think it was 95 or 96 GMC Jimmy, little one. And it was the first car that I had done with Fish, but we did eights in the kick panels, and then we did image dynamic eights, and we did image dynamic horns, and PPI amps and PPI subs, and it truly sounded great. The guy competed in local shows and won a bunch of shows with it. Plus, it had all this motorization, and it was just a killer install. So now Fish's cars are starting to sound good now, and and obviously we already had the Fish style to it with the motorization, and then now I'm starting to make Fish's cars safe. Fuses, relays, helping the guy out. So, funny little story with Fish.
That's
right about the same time we were doing a Jaguar, and it was in car audio. So was a Jimmy and the other Blazer that we did down there through Sounds. But we did this Jaguar, and it had 3 8W6s on each side of the trunk, I think.
I remember.
And so Fish built the trunk. I built the front of the car. I wired it all. And in the spare tire well, and that old Jaguar had a huge spare tire well, so we put the amps down there. And that was the first time that we had ever took like 3/4 inch plexiglass and then like blended it in with MDF at the time. But the plexiglass we ground down with grinders and routers, and we bonded it all in, and then we mask off the plexiglass windows, wet sand them, and then we paint the whole thing, and then peel that off, and we clear the whole thing. So it looked like it was all, just black lacquer, but you could see through certain windows of it that were raised, right? And so him and I kind of came up with that together. And right in the front of it, when this thing opened up, there was these badass Streetwire fuse blocks, which most every fuse blocks made by Streetwire was badass back then. And it had these wires going to it, and these LEDs that showed it showed bullshit is what it showed, because he never hooked it up. And I was like, Fish, that's not going to be serviceable. We can't have that whole thing so we can get out and get to the fuses, because you remember the plexiglass is all molded into this big panel, right? So you can't just pick it up and try to get fuses out. He said, bro, it's fine. It's not the real fuse blocks. I'm like, well, why are you doing that? And he goes, bro, listen, magazines can't talk. So that was one of the quotes I learned early on from Fish, is magazines can't talk. And so in Fish style, the true, well, I should say in the current Fish style, because I put the fuses in this time, because usually they weren't fused. The real fuses were down under this panel. But that was just kind of how I kind of changed Fish, and Fish was helping me learn, and so that's where that whole thing went. So Fish went through his divorce there, and went through some hard times, and he got let go on down the way a little bit. So I finished some projects, and I actually hurt my back there at Sounds of Southwest Florida in about 98 probably, and I was out for a couple of weeks, and while I was out, Sounds closed down. It went out of business. And so now I'm in South Florida, and I have no job. I had in the meantime, I had just met my fiance at the time. I think we were engaged, and her parents were living up in Orlando, which is about 3 hours north of where I was in Cape Coral. And so there was no other really shop in South Florida that I wanted to be at. I definitely did not want to go to the East Coast, to the Miami side. I did go over there one day with my little portfolio made, but it was somewhere I didn't want to be at the time, and currently still don't want to be. So we moved back up to Orlando, and I went to a local shop up there called Mr. Mobile. That was in Daytona Beach. Mr. Mobile. That was in Daytona Beach. And the manager there, his name was Scott Palmieri. And to this day, just like Ian was, Scott's still one of my best friends. We hit it off, and we're like brothers. Same thing. Loved going to work. And then Installer Institute was in Holly Hill, Florida, right by where we were in Daytona there. And they called me one day, and they wanted me to come teach fabrication.
What year was this?
So that had to be
early 2000s?
2000.
Early?
Yeah, like 2000 or 2001
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
It had to be right around there somewhere.
Hmm.
So I said, okay. It was a tough decision actually because I really enjoy working with Scott, and I really enjoy working on the car audio side of it. But to be honest, the Mr. Mobile wasn't the highest end shops. After coming from down to Southwest Florida, Mr. Mobile wasn't really a high-end shop, and it was kind of in the ghetto part of town. And needless to say, I went to the Installer Institute. I'll leave it at that. So there was a guy back in the day, and Gary, he came from your part of the country. I don't remember if he worked at a shop out there. And I'm trying to Howie Luwanik or he had a Camaro and had horns in the top of they rebuilt the face of the dash and it had big horns in it. And there was another guy that helped him. And these cars were in Car Audio magazine too, but I knew about Howie because of Car Audio. So
Howie's so bitter that you don't know his last name if he's listening to the podcast right now.
Yeah,
so
he
bitter.
probably is. He is. It was like Luwanik. I think it was
He's just
Chinese,
screaming at his
something.
radio right now, saying his real last name.
Yeah, you effer. So we had two schools. We had one in Long Beach and we had one in Daytona Beach. And he ran the Long Beach one, and he overseen both of them. But he taught out there, and I ended up moving up to teaching at the one in Daytona and ended up teaching the whole class then. So I was teaching the regular curriculum and the fabrication side of it. And I don't think that the teaching was really for me. I didn't like the repetition of teaching the same thing every 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like the fact that I was just teaching, on top of it, just basic fabrication skills. I loved the people that I was dealing with. I loved the students, and I loved their stories, and I still stay in contact with a few of them. But I feel that it wasn't for me. And so Metra actually moved me into regional sales for a year and a half or 2 years. And I really enjoyed regional sales because I got to talk to these shops all around the country. But now I'm back into wearing, a polo and slacks and going to work every day. And that 100% was not me. So while I was in sales, they let me do some research and development. And at the time, I was starting to do a little bit of CAD on 2D CAD because I had bought my first ShopBot CNC router, and that had to be in 2002, 2003. The only reason I bought it was because I was help developing the install bay line, and then while I was there, we brought on Fishman. I brought Fishman back to me this time at Metro to bring on the Fishman audio products, and then he did some trainings for the Installer Institute as well. So we needed MDF circles to sell in the install bay line, so I bought a CNC router with my friend Scott. We split it, and we paid for it within several months, just making literally MDF rings and selling them through Metro. So I learned the 2D side to learn that, and so I started helping design a few fuse blocks in the product development, and then some of the dash kits, with me coming with a little bit of engineering side of me, and then the background of the audio. I think I helped develop like one of the first Escalade kits they had out, and a couple other kits, and then so that brought us up to 2008, and 2008 is, we all know what happened in 2008, 2009 with the economy. And
I feel like you skipped over like
Yeah,
a good
yeah.
chunk
I feel
there.
like there was a good 5-year period.
That
Because,
was
hold on.
Metra.
I
So,
didn't hear anything
within
about
that-
the bug. I didn't hear
Yeah,
anything
the
about
bug,
the
right?
Civic.
Yeah. So obviously, like when I went to Installer Institute in like 05, 06, I remember seeing the bug that you built. So we've definitely skipped over.
Oh yeah, okay, we
a
did.
very
Oh yeah, we
important time
definitely
in
did.
the-
Yeah, so we
Probably
did.
one of the
Okay,
most
so
important stages in Carlson's background.
you're right. It's so far back. You're right. So let me rewind here. Regional sales. Oh, so then that's what it was. When I started doing product development, man, I really did skip over that. What in the heck was I thinking there? So when I started helping product development, I also was responsible for trade show displays for CES, for SEMA, and whatever show they went to. They had to be, we built big crates for it. And at that same time, we needed show cars. So now I'm doing, and my friend Scott, I brought him with me when I ended up going into that part of Metra. And so we needed show cars, we needed displays, and so Scott and I developed these displays, and we would build them, and he would finish them. And then we needed, for that year, it had to be 2004. It had to be 2004. CES, Metra needed a car to for the booth, and I had the Bug at the time. Now I'll rewind a little bit. The Installer Institute, before I went there, built this Bug, and it had to be early 2000s as well, and it was a 98 Bug, so it had to be 98 or 99 they built the Bug, and it was the new style, obviously, and it had like the flip-flop Ford paint it was like green and gold. You walked by it, and it was one color. You went back the other color. So Howie and the Installer Institute built this and debuted it at CES. Like I said, it had to be 98 or 99. It had some motorization. It had capacitors, tsunami capacitors that motorized out of the roof and motorized back down and shorted out every time because they made it too close to the sheet metal and we had disconnected caps. And there was just a lot going on with that car. So they used it for a year or two, and it was just setting. They ended up giving me the car and the little trailer that went in because they knew I would finally do something with it at some point when I went to work for them. So we were going to get a brand new Honda Element. Is that the little SUV back then? Yeah. Honda Element had just came out. And I had brought Fish on at this point to start doing the cars as well. And so it was just Fish and I building the show cars, and then Scott and I were building the trade show displays, so I was getting split both ways. But we were going to get a new Element because the whole technique I was just telling you about with bonding the acrylic to the plastic and making it look like bumps, and Fish wanted to do it on the outside of the car. And so the new Honda Element had composite front quarter panels, and I think the whole thing was composite on the outside, and he knew that he could cut into it and mold this plexiglass onto it and blah blah blah, because we were going to have the wires run through the front quarter panels behind acrylic, but you're going to look through the side of the car and see all the wires like the skeleton, running through it. And then I think that Mr. Jones, the owner of Metra, and Eddie, the vice president, were like, Fish, you're crazy. I'm not buying a brand new car and just letting you take a Sawzall to it. It's not happening. So I said, well, I still got the Bug. We could rebrand it and bring it back out again. And they said, that's a great idea. Let's build Jeremy's Bug. And so it was literally my Bug, and it still is. They didn't say, hey, it's our car again now just because you're building it. We're taking it back. They didn't do anything like that. So they basically let me build my own car with Fish for 6 months, 5 months, something like that. So I'm sure with a couple $100,000 in labor and materials, and we debuted it in 2004, and that same year was the same year that Alpine debuted their Mini, that the back of it slid open, and it had 6 foot, it came out the back and a center drive, and had the two 12s or 15s behind the seats, which we still currently have now. We bought that from Alpine. And JL debuted their little Mini Cooper, their original right-hand drive Mini Cooper, version 2. Version 1 they built in the 90s, so version 2 they debuted in 2004 as well. So Car Sound gave out an award that year, and all 3 of our cars won Best of Show that year from Car Sound. So that was pretty crazy to take my Bug we built and win Best of Show at CES. And another quick fact, I just said we had the Alpine Mini. We also have the JL Mini as well. So right now in my shop, I have all 3 cars that won Best of Show in 2004 CES from Car Sound magazine. So
that's pretty cool.
A little bit of history there. So after that, Fish was trying to do. He was still employed by Metra at the time, but he was starting to develop Fishman trainings more through the Installer Institute. And so he was spending more time over there doing what he did. And so right after we got back in CES, we needed another show car. We wouldn't start the next year's already because that's how it works. And Garrett, you know that more than anybody, is they don't happen overnight, right? You got to have a plan. So
at least 3 weeks.
yeah, at least, yeah. Not to sleep at the end. So I went out and I talked him into finding a Honda Civic. And I always loved the Honda Civics that had a little hatch in the back and a little tailgate flip down. I think it was and one of you can correct me, I think it was a 94 or 95 Civic, little hatchback wagon looking thing. Not a wagon, but a hatchback. It was always my favorite one. And I had a bunch of ideas for it. And so Fish started doing his little thing, and then I started building the Civic. I brought Scott on to help me. He was still doing trade show displays, but I brought him on to help me. Another guy, local guy, I brought in to help me. And we cut the whole side of the car out and welded in to make it like a fair weather car where you could just see in the side all the time. And we turned that rear hatch. We cut 30 inches out of the roof and motorized this whole hatch that opened and closed, and motorized and opened the doors, and it got out of hand, of course, and it ended up taking it until the very end and worked Christmas Day before CES. So we finished the Civic, went to the next CES, and that's when 2008 came along. That whole time it must have been 2007, because there was like 3 years we did that. We took the Bug and we competed with it for Bug, or took it all around and went to Puerto Rico, went to all these shows, went to Europe, and then we built the Civic. And then at the end of the Civic's time, we were going to do another car, and that's 2007, 2008, and that's when Metra said they had 110 people that go in one day that day, and I was one of the 110 people.
So let's pause real quick. Would you say that the Bug was the first really extensive, elaborate build that you did? Like, what was the first thing that was like a holy shit type of build? That
it was probably the Jimmy
with
at
Fish.
Founds, yeah, and then the Jaguar with Fish, and then the Blazer with Fish.
Okay.
So that would have been the three big ones, other than the first two or the three that we built that won IASCA finals. But that wasn't the, like you said, oh shit, look at this. That was
right.
That was a car sound competition car that it was made to look like stock, basically. So
I gotta say that you gotta think, like, I don't necessarily remember the Jimmy, but I remember the Jaguar from the cover. It was probably Car Stereo Review with Fish dressed up with the wetsuit and the fins on and everything. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty iconic.
And the Jimmy was super cool. The Jimmy had Sounds of Southwest Florida on it, and it had on the driver's side rear quarter, it had like a half of a spare tire cover, right? It looked like the spare tire was inside, like the factory was, and then you hit a button on the remote, and that cover swung open and went down underneath it, and that was the fish tank. So it was a fish tank under the motorized cover. So that, I would say that those three cars were probably my first real magazine coverage about me, about the cars I was working on. There was several articles about winning IASCA finals with the Integra and being on the MTX Thunder Force team and that whole deal. But in my head, my career, I feel that it was definitely the three cars with Fish that really let me go forward and keep going on the fabrication side. And
which one out of all three of those was the most like iconic to you or sentimental to you?
It was probably the Blazer, and the Blazer was built for a local kid up north of there, about an hour. But the Jimmy, I came in 3/4 of the way through, so I can't take a whole lot of credit for much of it. The Jaguar I helped from start to finish, but it was the owner's car, and it was built more for they let me do the front stage, so that's where I told you we kind of crossed with the sound quality and the fabrication side, and so it had a nice front stage, and it had EQX audio controls. I don't know what they were back then. EQ on each channel in the front, left and right.
Yeah,
And so
EQLs.
EQLs, that's what it was. Yeah. So that was like they wanted a car that they could drive and we could use as a demo car for sound quality, and to show that not only does it all look like somebody threw up a bunch of fiberglass with paint on it, but we could also have the sound quality as well. But then the Blazer we gutted that thing, and it was pretty cool. Like, I built the kick panels and the horns and the Sony tube TV in the middle and up to the center console. And I have a picture somewhere. It's in Car Audio Magazine somewhere. But that whole piece, from, if you can imagine, I think it was an 8 or 6 in each kick panel, and then the horns, and then where it goes in around the TV, and then up the center console, that was all one piece. We took it out of the car one piece. And it took Fish and I 13 or 14 hours to wrap that one piece. But it was crazy. It fit in there like a glove. And I got a bunch of old videos somewhere, and Fish is making fun of me and about not being able to wrap that thing or something like that, and lots of bad language, and my daughters will never hear. And and then Fish started building the back end. It had like this bridge that went across the top. And when we had built the Integra that won Iasca, we had taken, with the help of another local guy there, an electronics guy, we took a Yamaha rack processor out of a studio. It went in a rack in a studio, so it was 19 inches wide where they are, and it was probably 22 inches deep. And then we used it was all digital, and it had all the presets. And then we took the Yamaha crossover as well, and it was the same thing. It was a rack mount, and we extended those faces and put those brains in the back under acrylic, so it looked like computer boards back there. And so we got another one of those Yamaha processors and put in this Blazer. And so now we're really bringing sound quality in with Fish's fabrication and what I'm learning on fabrication. So I would say that Blazer, to answer your question, Matt, was probably my first real huge build that was, 2 or 3 magazines, and we debuted at Spring Break Nationals, and he won his class in Spring Break and sound quality, plus everybody flipped out over what it was. And so I think that was probably the first one with Fish that I did. That was probably my first iconic one.
Yeah, like I said, I remember walking into Installer Institute in 05, 06, seeing the Bug. And this is before I was even exposed to anything. Anything prior to that date, I was not exposed to, right?
Right.
And anything that I saw was just like Car Audio Mag or something like that. But again, I'm, fresh out of high school, but I see the Bug. And for me, I built my personal car, and I, showed it all over the place, and it did very well. But at the same time, it was nowhere near that type of
Eclipse.
Yeah, it was Eclipse. It had
Eclipse,
like super tail lights and all.
Yeah,
the whole interior was fiberglass and stuff like that. But that was all literally just built looking at like Car Audio Mag and reverse engineering stuff, and just using that as like my passion. And I remember seeing the Bug, and I was just like, "Fuck!" Like just the way that even the floors are custom, and just every part of the inside was completely reworked and overlapping and flush, and
we built that entire interior. Yeah, there wasn't one factory piece left in that car.
Yeah, and that was my takeaway. Just like looking at the seats, the floor, just everything, that it was just like completely seamless, and I was just like, well, Jesus Christ, like it gets way more than the box that I'm thinking it.
Right.
And
sure.
So the fab on that was so crazy, but the one thing that still sticks out to me is the headlights and the fish floating in the headlights.
Oh. Yeah. So that was kind of a cool, if you think about it, going back in my story here, in 97, when I went to work at Sounds of Southwest Florida, and I got thrown in the back with Fishman, I'm working with Fish under him basically. And then when we built these 3 cars, but then I bring him the Metra later on, and then the first car we built there was the Bug. And so, there was a period of probably 3 or 4 years there where he went to Miami and started Fishman Audio, and he worked with Mad Dog Manny, and they built some really cool cars over there. And they did the Installer Institute. The Installer Challenge. They started that with Rob over there. And so in that amount of time, he'll tell you that Fish is not the greatest businessman in the world. And so it was tough for him to consistently get a paycheck and consistently get projects in there, because he would just go so overboard with creativity, and it would start out as a piece of toast and end up as a full spread, you know what I mean? So that was his downfall, is he couldn't reel it in to make the money he needed to live in Miami.
I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges in our industry, period, is people not understanding how to work within an invoice. And it's like social media has almost made it worse for a lot of people, because they see all the cool shit that's being built and they're like, well, okay, I have $1,200 to build an underseat subwoofer enclosure, and then they end up spending 5 days on it to make it look super elaborate, and they've just lost a ton of money. It's such a challenge, really.
Yeah, because they're seeing Pate's boxes or whatever out of Texas, or with acrylic and LEDs or JT's boxes, whoever they are, and you're exactly right. And they're going to their boss saying, "Oh, I can do this, And here comes Mr. Customer, who's, like you said, it's got $800 budget, including an amplifier for this box, and and 5 days later, they've totally lost everything to do with it. So so I have to throw in there somewhere, and I'm trying to remember in my career where it was, but so it had to be, okay, so it was early. So I skipped a part there. When I left Mr. Mobile, I had my own shop. I started my own shop. Sorry, I take that back. I taught at the Installer Institute for a year and a half or 2 years. When I left the Installer Institute, because I was tired of teaching the same thing all the time, I started my own shop called Evolution Audio. While at Evolution Audio, you remember I left Installer Institute, which is part of Metra, right? So I left on good terms, and I left with the intention of building their trade show displays, doing everything they needed to do, and they let me start the Tsunami competition team, basically, sponsoring people with the Tsunami wire and helping support at the shows. And so it was my own business, but I was still helping Metra, and so I wasn't getting a paycheck per se, but it was definitely funded at the beginning by Metra. And that is when they gave me the bug and the trailer. That it was the bug that had been built several years before they weren't using. So I started building my bug at my shop, and that's when they called me up into regional sales after that. So my bug had been started, and then during that time as well, they had the very first installer challenge. Select Products did, and Gary Biggs called me and said, "Hey, we're going to do this team thing, installer challenge." And I'm like, "All right, I'm in." And so it was myself, Gary Biggs, Nolan Minnie, who worked in Louisiana, Dave Johnson, and my friend Ian Black. And so the five of us. So we won the very first installer challenge ever. We beat Card Toys. No, not Card Toys. Hi-Fi Buys. Hi-Fi Buys out of Atlanta was a huge shop at the time, and they had a guy named Billy Brown, and he was a really good fabricator. And then they had stores that were in Texas as well, I believe, and they brought in a little guy. His name was Ainsley you might know his last name. It's Fukuda, and so that was Mark's brother. And so here's Billy Brown and Ainsley Fukuda and three other guys, and we're like, oh shit, But we beat them. We built these cars, and 2 cars, and they had to be Iasca sound quality cars. They were going to get judged just like a sound quality competitor would as far as install goes and sound quality, and we ended up beating them pretty well. So we were the very first winners of that ever. So then this next year's Spring Break Nationals came, and Select decided to do the very first, and to this day, the very only SPL installer challenge. And it was just 3 people on each team then. And they gave you 24 hours instead of 48 hours. And they gave you 2 Astro vans. And so it was me and my best friend Ian and Gary Biggs. And we won that one as well. So 2 installer challenges, 2 wins. Had my own shop. Metra, I was doing stuff for Metra, but Metra needed help in sales, and so that's when they called me into sales, and that's when I went into product development and built the Bug and the Montero. The Montero was for the Bug. God, I forgot a bunch of shit. So Fish and I built a Montero at Metra as well. So that one thing was pretty crazy too. And then the Bug, and then I built the Civic, and then 2008 came, and that's when they let me go. So that brings it up to 2008 finally, because you're right, I did skip a bunch of stuff there, and I totally got sidetracked. So, but I'm gonna stop talking and let you ask questions now, because I feel like I've talked this whole time.
You have, but it's good. Like it's good to kind of get the backstory to all that, because there's still a ton to go. I mean, you're not.
And I'm gonna say it starts to get fun once the stories that we've already heard start overlapping. Like when you're talking about a certain car that is rivaling like the Alpine Mini Cooper that we talked about at the same time, and you're seeing a different perspective from just all sides of what's happening. Soon we're going to fill in all the everything's going to be filled in.
I'll tell you from my point of view, like, and this is right in that time frame, was like my first year at Alpine, and we come rolling in the back, and like, you know, I'm super pumped because we built this crazy car, and I remember Brownie and I roll by, and Jeremy's unloading the Civic off the back, and we're like, what the hell is that? Like, and yeah, so it was probably 07, CES 07, I think, that you brought the Civic.
Yeah, probably so. And fun fact about the Civic, I know we don't want to get too much into builds and stuff like that, but you know, the Civic, that was my first car that I was responsible for at Metra. No Fish, just me and my friend, and just basically do what you want to do, you know. And so I decided to turn it into, and it was obviously influenced by the Alpine guys, because, you know, and I don't know, Gary, you might have to fill this in. So if that was 07, so what was before that? It was the Civic, the Mini.
And then the X5 was F1 launch in 06. Oh,
wait,
05.
And the 05. NSX, no, not the NS. What was it? What was the first one that was it? Vu and Brownie did that's a Civic?
No, Mini Cooper was Vu's first car. If you go back, it was RSX, then Civic.
Oh, RSX, that's what I'm thinking of. It had the gauges that came around, Jay.
Yeah. Yep. RSX, Civic, Mini Cooper, X5, Sinister 6, RLS, boat.
6 of the baddest cars ever built, hands down.
Heck of a run.
So it's
as much as you try to collect them all, there's one you can't have.
The one that burnt down.
Yeah, the one that was destroyed.
Yeah. So that, and I just said it, and hopefully Matt heard it, everybody else hears this. But in my opinion, 28 years into doing this now, you know, that run of vehicles was definitely my influence. That got my creativity going, and it was just like I would go to CES for a couple of years, and I would say, "What the," you know, I just walk away. I just walk away, because not only are these baddest cars that were built at the time, but of course they had them in this dim room and like a line to get in. And it was just a presentation that went along with the whole thing. And here they are, all in their button-down Alpine shirts, and like. They were this shit. You guys were the shit back then, and between you and then what Mark Lowe and the Rockford guys were doing at the time, you know, I think those and nobody will ever change my opinion. Those were and Gary, you'll probably agree with me. They probably weren't the nicest cars ever built. They weren't the best fabrication ever built, but it was definitely the creativity and the stupid details that were just like, holy shit, how'd they even think of that? You know?
And I think that era really just pushed, and it was all fed off of those. I mean, for me, even, you know, I came in late in the game to the Alpine build stuff, but like the early Alpine cars, the Rockford stuff, like obviously all the stuff that you and Fish were doing, like everybody played off of everybody. And part of that was the whole, you know, trying to one up everybody. And that's what kind of made it fun. It was like a contest of who can come up with the like stupidest idea.
In retrospect, if we think about that time period, and me being the generation in which basically saw that as their passion to get into the industry, can you imagine if that like had just never happened in the industry? like I feel like that really projected a lot of influence around that time period to really
I
I
agree.
mean just with you guys, right? Because you're seeing stuff that Alpine's doing, you're seeing stuff that Rockford's doing, and it's literally just fueling the passion and literally the competitiveness of just wanting to be better and build something better. So it's like we've that time of car building, we figured out really what is fully capable of fabrication and all of
That's
this
for sure.
integration, right? Because like that was all that to the max. Fabrication, integration, and just doing whatever and anything's on the table of car audio. It's not like that anymore,
And
but
that
it
was
had
kind
its
of the
time and it was wonderful.
that was the lead-in of the internet becoming, widespread, and so the information traveled faster and things progressed really fast. And that was also the era of hot import nights, and that like that whole scene and pushing lighting and trying to stand out from the other row of cars. Like a lot of that stuff, just like it pushed really, really hard. And then, obviously we'll get there as we get to your current day builds and that kind of stuff. But like, after that kind of 08, 09 era, like it just took a turn to this like more integrated, more focused on quality and integrating and matching vehicle styling than the fiberglass volcano world.
Right, and I agree. And in the whole fiberglass looking like somebody threw a fiberglass in the back of cars obviously had to come to an end at some point. But I also feel that the 08, 09 changed it because of budgets.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Because
That's a very valid point.
there wasn't the Rockford Fosgate unlimited budgets anymore. There weren't the Alpine unlimited budgets anymore.
Whoa. We had a budget, a strict budget.
You just never followed it.
No, we did. We did. And it wasn't as much as you'd think it was. I told Brian what our budget was one time, and he said, damn, we spend that much at the machine shop.
Yeah. Brian and Mark Lowe both told me that it was stupid back then, what they were spending. So, but yeah, I definitely think it was the money that the manufacturers were putting into those demo cars to do what Matt just said, or Gary, I don't remember which one said it. It was to who's going to one up who's going to do the next thing. It's going to get the attention at the show. And back then, obviously the big show was CES, right? That's when everybody debuted the big cars, and then they would go basically a whole year, and then they would basically end up at SEMA, and then somebody would debut a new car at CES every year. And that's from the manufacturer side of things, obviously. And Matt, I know you were coming on board then, and I know you did a lot of the hot import night stuff when you were in Orlando, I believe. I've heard in the podcast, and so that's a different level of, we're on the manufacturer side, and we had no budgets, here's people like yourself, Matt, that were just coming into this, and obviously you had budgets, you had what you had, and you were making the best you could with what you had financially, and whatever you could find to put in there as far as products or whatever, and you weren't getting a lot of, I wouldn't say, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but after 08 or 09, you weren't getting a bunch of free product from people, even if you had a big hot import nights. They weren't giving you...
I will say, though, I was pretty smart about it, because I was going to school at UTI in like 2006-ish in Orlando, but I would use that time, because it's like you had the ability to work on your own car there. So anytime I did a mod, like I'm doing it at school on school time, like all the transmission classes, I'm doing transmission work to like my Lightning. I'm doing, the supercharger when we're doing like performance, and like I just timed it all perfectly. So I built like my whole Lightning during the time of school, which was pretty rad.
That's pretty smart of you.
Yeah.
So just a quick thing. I was starting to talk about the Civic there, and we all, of course, how it always happens, we got sidetracked. My ADHD medicine wears off about this time of night. So the Civic, we tried to do that year, since I was kind of just given do what you kind of want to do while everything's going to fit in, I decided to make it all electric, and it was driven with a joystick. And so the joystick we took out of, I don't know what field we even took it out of, but you were able to drive the Civic with the joystick, forward, backwards. You can turn with the joystick. It's all one joystick to do everything, including brakes. And so that was kind of unique, obviously. But probably the most unique thing is that, so at about the same time, Metra had been developing their home theater division called Ethereal. And my friend Brent, who works there, had met these people out of New York that were doing something with, I don't know what, something with automation, home automation. And there was this really sharp kid, and I don't remember his name now, but we got them involved because they gave us these 2 black boxes that allowed us to tie switches in for automation, to, macros and all this stuff to make this car work. But the unique thing was, this kid was able to take my Sony PSP, and we were able to control the whole car with a Sony PSP. And so the top buttons, you could open and close the doors with the top buttons. You could open the hatch. You could change the video. So in that car, on the Civic, instead of doing like a dome light, I did, Metra just came out. That was the first year they were debuting Monkey Video, horrible name, that they were selling their new own video products. And so I took, I think it was 20 6-inch monitors and put them in the headliner. And we had 6 DVD players in there. And so what we did, we took one of the DVD players and dedicated it to the headliner. And we just had something that just changed colors all the time. And so that's what we used for lighting for the whole top of it, was just continuously changing screens, basically, But the coolest part about the Sony PSP was the fact that I could stand next to the car and drive the car with it, because we made it electric, and we made it, with plus or minus 5 volts on this joystick to give us forward or backwards or whatever it was. And so literally we built a remote control car, and I drove it. I stayed right next to it for the first couple of times we did it in the parking lot, but I ended up driving probably, I would say, maybe 600 or 700 feet with this thing, and turn around and come back, 2 football fields maybe. And they put the special thing for a pack on the back of my Sony PSP that gave me the distance. And this kid was just a tweak. I mean, he was smart. But that was probably the coolest feature about that Civic that nobody ever seen, really, was that you could stand next to it and drive it, and you could open and close the doors while it was driving, and you could open the hatch, and you could switch between 6 DVD players and 24 screens, and you could all do it from that Sony PSP, though. So that was a pretty unique part about that car that nobody really knew about, was the Sony PSP. It was, I think, in the cover of the magazine. I was holding the Sony PSP or something, but that was actually one of the coolest things to that point that I had come up with, that I helped, I had the idea, and he just made it happen. And he's like, oh yeah, I can do that. And like a night later, he comes back, here you go. I'm like, really? So, but
I feel like we need a future mobile solutions class where we build something to that era, right? And we just build something that is just it's stupid, right? It doesn't make sense in the grand scheme of things, but you're doing it because you can fucking do it.
So we're not talking like
that would be a great class.
We're not talking like the Pimp My Ride cars. We're not putting like toasters in the back of it, right? No, you're talking about just
but
like
we're talking about some stuff that, when you think about it in hindsight, it's actually brilliant. Like controlling the car with the controller, right? Mm-hmm. But in the grand scheme of things, it's just totally irrelevant to the functionality of a normal use, right? It would be cool to see what ideas we'd all come up with and how it would be delivered, and the end result from the different groups of people. It'd be really cool, and it would be a throwback to that time period.
I think it'd be really cool if we could do that all virtually.
Right.
Yeah.
Matt, we're getting old and lazy is what we're saying.
Let's do it with VR glasses on. Let's do something. Let's bring it to the next era.
Is Google Glass still a thing?
I don't think so.
Is Google Glass? No.
I think this one we missed.
So all right. So that brings us up to end of Metra.
Just getting out of Metra.
Just leaving Metra. My severance. I think I had 8 or 9 months severance pay from Metra, and the probably next day or the day after, I I'm not one to set at all. And so the next day or the day after, I went to the local and famous Soundcrafters in South Daytona, and Paul Papadeas, who started Spring Break Nationals so many years ago, ran Soundcrafters. And that afternoon, I had a job basically, and he's like, "What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He knew what I'd done or where I've been, and he goes, "Well, obviously we don't build this type of cars there, but we can maybe try to get some of those bigger builds in the house and blah blah blah." So the first thing I did was started there, and they had a pretty big bay. I think there's like 6 or 8 car bay, and I took 2 of the bays and framed it up. I built all the walls and framed it up and built a new wood shop because what they had was not going to work. So my first month there, I built the wood shop, redid all the fab side of it, and remodeled some stuff for them. And then, during that time I'm doing that, I told Paul, I said, we probably need to rethink about how we're going to approach this whole me being there and how to sell me, basically. And Matt, this is going to go right along with what you've done with Brian. You know, it needed to be a separate entity in itself that could be focused on only the high-end builds, because at the end of the day, you're not going to try to go to these car audio manufacturers now that have halfway bankrupt out of the last couple of years and ask for $100,000 to build these show cars, and they're not going to want to come somewhere that's doing deck and fours all day long at the same time. So we wanted to create a environment that was high-end and that perceived it was high-end. And then I was there, and we had the capability to do, these big builds. And so I came up with a name, and it was called Image Driven, and it was IMIJ, Image, and it was Image Driven. And good friends of mine who did all the marketing for Metro at the time helped me during this whole thing, and we did a logo, and we did brochures, and we went to SEMA and first year and met all these people, and we had some pretty good sized projects planned. And so when I went to there, and I know Gary will remember, I'm not sure about Matt, there was a kid there that had been learning, doing some pretty high-end stuff there. And do you guys know who Joe Padula is? He runs the Installer Institute now.
Yeah,
super talented, super uber talented.
Yeah.
Like, he's the MacGyver of our industry. He will figure it out.
Sure.
Yeah. I have nothing but respect for Joe Padula. So Joe ran Soundcrafters for 20-some years at that point, or 15 years, however long he had been there. And within 2 weeks of me working there, Joe got fired. And I was like, oh, God, this guy's going to hate me forever. And it had absolutely nothing to do with me. There had been a lot of problems going on this whole time, and there was another employee there that kind of threw somebody under the bus, and Joe got fired. But right before I came there, Joe had been building a 240Z with Z. You guys know Z?
Yep. That was a beautiful car, beautiful build.
Right. So when I was building the Civic, Z and Joe were building the 240.
Yeah, I never even realized that Joe was involved in that build.
Yes,
the publicity of it.
The whole motorized steering wheel coming out, the subwoofer turn, that's all Joe.
Yeah, it was the W7, yeah.
Yep. So originally, that was my idea of that steering wheel. I was doing it on the Civic. I don't know if you probably don't remember, but back then the Tsunami logo was an oval, and it had something on the inside of it. And so we were going to have a Tsunami logo flush in the dash on both sides of the car. And you were going to be able to motorize one of them out and drive with it, or you're going to be able to motorize the other one out and drive with it. That's what we can do in the Civic originally before we decided to do the joystick. And so we decided not to do that, and then Z wanted to motorize something out. And so I don't know if it was Z or Joe that came up with it. I'm pretty sure it was Joe. Joe's definitely one that facilitated the whole thing and made it all work. It had to be, yeah, because I remember Z was working on the back of the car at the time and learning how to weld and a bunch of stuff. So, um, so I came there, Soundcrafters. Joe got fired, he left, and then um, at the end of right before I left Metro, actually, I was coming over in the evenings. Paul had hired me in the evenings to help get the 240 finished for Spring Break Nationals. So this had to be April sometime in whatever year. It had to be 2008 or 2009, whatever it was. So I came over and I helped build the floors, the headliner, and I don't remember whatever part I had involved in. At the same time, Z was still finishing up in the back, and they finished it because I was at Metro, so they finished it on their own. When I came there, Z was working under me basically at the time. I came as install manager. And then we started the image-driven side of it. And then Z would call in. He called in sick for a couple of days, and come to find out, he had flown out to Galpin, and they wanted him at Galpin to do what was the show? We just talked about it, MTV, Pimp My Ride.
Pimp My Ride.
Yeah, Pimp My Ride. So Z left and went out there, and we did a S10, a couple other builds there at Soundcrafters were kind of high end, and I got a phone call one day, I think it was in April, and it was Dennis Hopper. I don't know if you guys know Dennis Hopper or not, but he's been in our industry a long time. He recently, he actually is going through a divorce, which sucks, and he was in Colorado, now he's back in Florida where his parents are. Actually, he's up by St. Augustine right now, he's buying a place up there, but he called me, and at the time he was the Electromedia rep, and he's like, hey, I got this dealer down in South Florida that needs somebody to come run his whole basically car audio division. And I'm like, well, who is it? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, you never heard of him. But he said he would come up to Spring Break Nationals next week and meet you and have a meeting with you. And I said, okay. And so Dennis put it all together, and this guy came up, Matt came up, and met with me, and it sounded promising. It gave me more power and gave me better salary, because when I left Metra and went to Soundcrafters, I took a pretty big hit, if you can imagine. South Daytona, compared to a manufacturer doing car audio, it's pretty big difference. And so Paul was definitely nice enough to bring me on and hire me and let me do my thing. But at the end of the day, I needed to support my family better, and I needed to see a brighter future than building some cars out of South Daytona, Florida. So I met with this guy, Matt, and probably 2 months later, I was starting down there, maybe 3 months. I had to finish something, I think, for a couple weeks, and it ended up being a couple months before I was able to start down there. So, so that brings us up to Palm City, and that's where I'm currently at. I'm in Palm City still. So that was in 2008. So that was what, 13 years ago, whatever it is.
I can't believe it's been that long.
I know, right?
Yeah. So May 5th is my hire date, Cinco de Mayo. So every year. So I just had, and this past May, it was my 13th year with Matt. So that's kind of where you guys. Well, Gary knew me before that, but that's definitely probably more when Matt knew me on that side of it, being at Extreme and going from there. So, and I feel like that's where my career, I was able to put all of my thoughts and it was my show basically, I wasn't really influenced by anybody else. I was just kind of given, here's the keys to the place. Build your own wood shop, build your own audio division, hire who you want to hire, and let's move forward. So when I first went down there, the facility was big. I think Extreme, pre-paint department, so it was just the one side. So it had to be like 12,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet. And then when I came, there was a bay next to Extreme that Matt owned as well, and it was another 8,000 or 6,000 square feet. So I cut a door into that, and we made that all one at that time. And so the first thing I did was gutted that whole warehouse and built all the rooms and built wood shops and storage and built-in snap-on toolboxes, and just kind of created an environment that I wanted to come to work and work in every day. So I was hired as the install manager, or basically the audio manager, and within about 3 months I was the general manager of the store. And then that tenure lasted until about 3 years ago when I left full-time and built Avant-Garde. So if you want, we can back up a little bit, or if you got questions between here and there. But the first, several years at Extreme, we built some pretty big cars, but they weren't the SEMA cars or the CES cars. They were the Spring Break National cars or the local shows or local Florida shows, because obviously we were trying to create business locally.
Right,
yeah, it's great to have a car that goes to SEMA, but I promise you that 90% in Palm City or 99% in Palm City is never going to see a car that goes to SEMA, So it did no good for us as a business sense. So, but, so basically for the first couple of years there at Extreme, we built the place and I hired some talented people, and trying to think how the years fall out there. So that was 2008 I started there. So like 2010, I ran for Installer of the Year. I think that sounds right. And
you won in 2012, right?
I won in 12. So in 2011. 2011, I ran for Installer of the Year, and we were up, and I put us in for Retailer of the Year. So we went to Dallas, and Extreme won Retailer of the Year in 2011, and I'm trying to think who would have won in 11. Who's before me? Oh, who in the fuck's John Webb?
Shit.
That's where that whole thing. That's where that whole thing came from. Who the fuck's John Webb? So that was in 2011, and then in 2012 I ran one more time, and I'm pretty sure, and Solomon would have to tell you this, but I'm pretty sure I was the first one to ever turn an iPad in as my presentation. Everybody else was turning books in and pictures and whatever, but I took a brand new iPad, did my whole presentation on the iPad, and then basically made it, when he opened the box, all he had is turn it on and hit. I took everything off the home screen, and he hit one button and it started the slideshow. And so I didn't have my iPad for like 5 months. It took him like five months to get the iPad back to me. So that was 2012. I won Installer of the Year. And I kind of feel like after that, like at 13 or 14 is when they started making everything digital, starting the digital side. And so maybe I was, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I was the first one that turned in an iPad for the president for Installer.
I remember calling you about like, so what did you do to get over the top? And you're like, well, I sent in an iPad. And I'm like, well, fuck.
Yeah. So, and I guess that kind of wraps up my career as far as mentality. I always try to do something different. That was just no different than I've always done. Is always try to be creative or do something that somebody else wasn't doing. I've never really been a follower, I guess. That's not really true either, because I was definitely, like I said, influenced from the Alpine guys and the Sony guys and the Rockford guys.
Well, I think that's what makes people special, right? Because, there's a lot of times in which, I'm doing something in a car and there's always an easy way out, right? There's always a very easy solution, but it's also a very, popular solution. It's a solution that you're going to see and it's going to be skipped over. But it's it makes somebody special to do something that you would look at and you're like, well, that's clever. I've never thought of that. Or that's a really smart way to attack that car or integrate that piece. And that's, at the end of the day, I think what you have to do always is challenge yourself. And it's funny because when I get into a project, a lot of times as I'm talking to the client about like a vision, I'll throw out something that I think is challenging, but I throw it out there so I become married to it, right?
Right.
So I feel like I have to do it, right? So like when I did the Escalade, I told him what I wanted to do and what I saw, and he's like, well, that's an awesome idea. So that instantly makes me married to it, so I just have to figure it out. Instead of not saying anything, like taking the easy way out and just saying, oh, we'll come up with what we come up with. And depending on time or whatever, I can always take the easy way out, get the car out, and call it a day. But
Right.
you know what I mean?
And
That's my tactic to like
it's
stay
funny.
married to an idea that's different.
I kind of do the same thing, and I have for a long time, but mine works a little different. When I'm with a client or trying to sell an idea to a client, I'm always trying to think of that next thing that, like you said, makes it different, right? And makes it more of a challenge. But in my head, I'm trying to sell something that's never been done before so that he can not ask me how much it costs.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Because, hey, I can, I don't know, I can make your bug drive with a joystick on the door, no steering wheel in the car. You can do that. How much is that going to cost? I don't know. It's never been done before. It costs what it costs, type thing. And so I've always tried to throw out things like that too, kind of in the same realm that you were saying. It was just to say, throw it out there and see if he bites for it, first of all. But then to you don't know what it costs, because we're a time and material company, and I have been for a long time in what we do. And so I was like, I don't know. One of my quotes I use all the time is, and I have for a long time, basically since a little bit before Extreme, is we've always been time and material on the big projects, and every time a customer has asked me how much something's going to cost, my response is good, and it's like, I don't know, all I do, I sell time. How much of my time do you want? Do you want X amount of time? You want it this nice, or do you want a bunch of details? Because you want a bunch of details, and that's going to cost you more time. So you just buy more of my time. So that's how much it costs. However many details you want is how much it's going to cost.
Yeah,
And
I kind of say the same thing in a different aspect. Obviously, you can continue with anything and create more layers and detail. The more layers and detail, the more integrated and OEM in our sense is going to look. Obviously, the less time, you can't have all these different layers and all of these, different pieces on pieces, all that kind of stuff. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to time.
Yeah, you want the anchovies, you don't want the anchovies, Right. So, but so I feel like I'm doing a bunch of talking here again, but I guess we're kind of.
So at what point are you at Extreme? So I should back up. So what point are you diving into a classic car to the point where you have the understanding, okay, there's so much demand for this, and then you create a separate entity?
Okay, so, and that's where I was getting ready to go next. So 2012, I won Installer of the Year, and was awesome, right? That's a great feeling. And it was later, so that was probably August? No, it's probably, I'm guessing, yeah, probably around the August time, right? Or September, whenever it was then.
August.
August. So I was at home that Christmas, on Christmas break, and on my back porch here in Palm City, and sitting by the pool, drinking a martini. I remember it specifically, and I had a deep conversation with myself. I was like, self, what's next? Because at this point, so that was 2012, 2013, whatever it was. So I've been doing this since 93. So that was 20 some years into it, I felt that I had learned enough on the CAD side, on the 2D side, that I could go somewhere and run a cabinet shop or do something that was related to CAD and related to a CNC router. Or so I'm thinking to myself, what's next? Is it another career? Is it something else in this career? Do I change career paths altogether? I had to have that talk with myself, because honestly, at that point, I had reached a plateau, or no, I wouldn't say a plateau, a pinnacle, maybe.
Right.
that I knew I never wanted to win that again. I've said that from day one. If I win Star of the Year, if I ever win Star of the Year, I would only win it once because the next person needs to win it, right? It needs to move on.
And there needs to be a new goal.
There does. And so I knew I didn't want to go down that route again. I didn't want to continue what we were doing. Honestly, the retail thing after leaving Metro for 9 years and going back to retail, it was not my favorite. I still had to deal with people and customers, and I wasn't digging it. Let's say
you're trying to scale after reaching the top, right? You're trying to find,
that's it.
Okay, where can we continue to go? Because I'm ready to keep going and keep going. I don't want to stop where I'm at.
Right. So 2013 comes, and by the way, that conversation with myself that night, I never came with a conclusion. It will play out. 2013 comes, and that SEMA, which was, so that would have been November of 2013, I guess, or 14. I don't know, these days all run together. But I met, which I had known from down here, his name was Jeremy Miranda, and he had a company called Miranda Built, and they were about an hour and a half south of us. And we were sitting around somewhere in SEMA, or a bunch of our group with a bunch of his group, and we started talking, and he was out of space, and I'm like, well, on the back half of my audio division, I've got an extra 6,000 square feet or 5,000 square feet. And I said, I'm pretty sure that I have to get with Matt, the owner, and I think it would work great for all of us if we'd have you in-house, because then we have another section down the way we could put a paint booth in for you, and you could have everything kind of in-house. And then you could have, if we ever needed to do anything audio for you, because at the time I was just doing audio, I wasn't doing doing any fabrication. I said we could do some audio for you or some wiring for you, or I could help you make jigs or bucks on the CNC, the laser, whatever we needed, and I'm sure we can make a happy marriage out of it. And so he went back, and it's probably about a month later, he called me one day and was like, I've really thought about what you had to say, and I think I'm really interested in maybe moving my business up there. And I said, okay. So they moved in, and they had already started building. Yeah, so they had already built the Nova down south before they moved up here, and it had gone away. Oh, when they moved in, they shipped it to Charlie Hutton to be painted in Idaho. And so myself and Jeremy Miranda and the owner of the Nova flew out to 3 days and spent 3 days with Charlie Hutton in Idaho, went over paint scheme and all this. And at the time, Jeremy was like, hey, do you think you can build the interior in this car? I said, yes. Really uncertainty. And he said, well, back at home in the shop, talk about in Florida, we had a 69 Camaro. It was an orange Camaro that they had just finished. It came out of paint. It was final wired. It was done, and it needed an interior. So at the time, they had been sending stuff to local guys, basically J.C. Whitney style, buy carpet or buy seats and put them in and whatever it was, and wasn't too custom up to that point. And he says, do you think you can build a full interior, including a dash? And I said, sure. Pause. So we got back from the Nova thing up there and got back and started on this Camaro. And that was my first full interior, including a dash. I was handed a car for the first time ever that had no interior whatsoever in it. It was some wires and 2 3/4-inch steel fuel lines running through the damn car. They were huge, and it pissed me off because they were always in my way. I remember that. But I remember there wasn't much of a budget. I bet there was probably only a $30,000 or $40,000 budget back then for that. But it was one of those things that I knew that from my conversation that I never finished drinking that martini, this could be the answer to my question, right? This could be where I could head to next, and still
it's the prove it job.
To stay where I am, and to have a new job description, right? And so at the time, I had just hired Justin Marks He was living in Atlanta, and we had just finished. We rebuilt my Bug at Extreme, and we went to Spring Break Nationals, and I met Justin there, and I hired Justin. He moved down, and so Justin helped me on that first car on that Camaro, and it ended up being a pretty cool car. So that was the first hot rod that I ever used magnets in as well. There was several other cars that at Extreme that I started using magnets in back in the day, but that was the first hot rod that we used magnets in. So we finished that Camaro. It's actually a pretty badass car. It's been wrecked twice now. The guy's kind of a jackass that owns it. Went to jail for a while, but long story there. But finished that car, and I used that car. So I finished part of that car before I won Installer of the Year because I used part of that car for my Installer of the Year presentation. I remember that. So it was that made me go home, I think, after I won Installer of the Year, that was like, this could be it. But is there more cars after this? Is there a career doing these interiors? Because I wasn't a trimmer. I didn't know how to sew. I'd never really used leather before. I'm getting thrown into a position that I had to build this whole interior and then make it look like a hot rod at the end of the day. So we finished that car, and then the Nova comes back from paint from Charlie Hutton. And the Nova at the time was the baddest hot rod I've ever been involved in. To this day, it's still a badass car. But just like when I was at Sounds of Southwest Florida with Fish, and I brought the sound quality or the wiring side to Fish, and he brought the fabrication side, it was the same thing with Jeremy Miranda now. So Jeremy Miranda hands me this badass car there was $500,000 into before I even got my hands on it. And he's like, well, what do you want to build? I'm like, well, I don't know. So in the hot rod world, there's a renderer. His name's Eric Brockmeyer. And Eric has done, Eric's done these renderings for all these, for Boyd Coddington back in the day, all these big guys. So that came with a render, and he's like, can you build this? And I'm like, sure. And so we got the Nova done, and it looked nothing like the rendering. Zero like the rendering, because just like we talked about a little bit going off on tangents as you build something, it was not what I seen for that car. It didn't go with that car, and it was not even close to proportion to the car. Like, you couldn't have built what he did and make it functionable. And so I think that's really what Jeremy Miranda liked about what I did, was I was able to take my own design, take some cues off that, and put it all in perspective and put it all in scale to this car. So we finished this car. They want to debut it in Detroit at Detroit Autorama. And for those who don't know, on the hot rod side, the Detroit Autorama is where they give away the award every year called the Riddler Award. So in the hot rod world, the Riddler Award is a pretty big deal. And so in order to win the Riddler Award, you have to make the grade 8. And in order to make the grade 8 in Detroit, it's the act of God. I mean, there's guys that go there 10, 12 times and finally make a car that makes a grade 8, right? So all these cars that are on display for the grade 8, if you've ever been to a World of Wheels or these high-end car shows, they've got the cars up on 3 jacks or wheel stands. They got mirrors under them and lights and pedestals around the whole thing. And we walk in. We did make, before I left, I made some acrylic little arms with some PVC painted matte black PVC, matte black acrylic, and we put this little 20 by 20 stanchion thing around it. So we rolled in on the carpet, took the air ride, dropped it on the ground, put the stanchions around it, and left. Right? So here's all these cars that are like millions of dollars on displays in these cars, and here's the sinister looking Nova that's just laying on the ground. You can't even see under the car, let alone judge under the car, and the stanchions around it. And the next day we made the grade 8. So everybody was like, what the hell? How did this even happen, right? So the judges there, they've been doing this a long time. They spent about 6 or 7 hours on each car over 2 days judging the grade 8 to find the Riddler. We did not win the Riddler. We knew we weren't going to win the Riddler. There was just, we didn't have the money involved or the time that most of these people did. But what was unique about it was they do talk to you after it's done. And they did tell the owner that one of the main reasons they made the grade 8 was because of the interior. Because it was so outside the box, and the attention to detail and the crisp lines and how everything went inside one another and how the magnetic panels worked and blah, 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 that they were just blown away by this new style of interior, right? Because now that I'm an interior guy after 2 cars, traditional interior is Landau foam with leather on top of it, right? You carve your shapes, you tuck it in the grooves, and that's what it becomes of. Well, to this day, fast forward to this year, we still have not used Landau foam on any of these cars. And so we were the new guys. We were using the new techniques, right? We were using magnets, and we were using these composites, all plastics, and, doing things our way. But you have to remember that the new way was the way that I knew, because I've been doing that in the car audio world, right? And so now I'm just bringing everything I knew in the car audio world and throwing everything I had into this upholstery world. So we started getting some notoriety when we won the grade 8, and then we went on to win Street Machine of the Year with that car from Good Guys that year. So that was awesome. So then, right after we won Street Machine of the Year, I got a call from Jeremy Gerber, and Jeremy Gerber owns the Roadster Shop in Chicago. And for those of you that are listening that don't know who the Roadster Shop is, I would say hands down probably the biggest, putting out the nicest, most cars in the country, and the baddest chassis out there. So they have 2 different divisions. They have a division that builds chassis, and they have a division that builds these cars, right? I know at one time, a couple of years ago, when we were starting doing work for them, they were building 30 cars over $300,000 at one time. And if you do the math quickly, that's like $9 million in hot rods they were building at the time. But he called and said, "Hey, I met you once with Jeremy Miranda. I know that you're a hell of a fabricator. Do you think you can do an interior on a Chevelle for us?" And I said, "Absolutely," And I'm like calm and collected on the phone with him. It's one of those moments you get off the phone and you jump up in the air and scream, and you're like, "Wow." Because I'm still the new guy, right? I'm still that car audio guy that was just started with 3 years doing car audio, but I'm in a different career now. Now I'm doing the interior world. So we do Onyx. Onyx was the name of the first black Chevelle we did with the red interior for him, and we got the car back to him. And I got an email from Jeremy Gerber, which I still have, and to let me know that they've never received a car back from an upholstery shop or a subcontracted service of any kind that had them rethinking the quality that they were turning out. Meaning the quality that we gave them, they were rethinking the quality that they gave us the car in and where they could improve to bring it up to our quality. And I was like,
That's awesome.
Holy shit, because I'm just, like I said, I'm just doing what I've done for years and just kept trying to do better and perfection. I'm definitely the OCD guy, the perfection guy, the fastener guy. Everything's got to be perfect. And so that is what has carried me to today, was that mentality, that first car with the Roadster Shop, leading up with the other 2 cars from Miranda built. But this is where the problem incurred. So we did another car for him as well, the Roadster Shop. When they picked that one up, we did another one for him. He called me one day. He's like, "Jeremy, listen, nobody is doing what you're doing in the country, hands down, period, on the upholstery side. But we have a problem. You're giving us these cars back, and somewhere in the trunk or somewhere in a sill plate or somewhere, we were making these little things on the laser that said interior, engineered and developed by Extreme Performance, Palm City, Florida, right? Because we were truly engineering them at this point. Everything was CNCs, everything was laser. So that was the engineering side. And then we were fabricating them at the same time. He's like, "Listen, I'm all about you putting your logo in there or whatever you need to do, but it cannot say Extreme Performance anymore. Because people are reading at the show that all they see is Extreme Performance, and they tie the performance into the performance of the car. They're not really associating just the interior with it, right?" And so I'm like, okay, I get it. So I went to Matt, the owner, and I'm like, "Listen, we got to rebrand the company. We got to rebrand this division, similar like we did when I was at Soundcrafters." But he's like, "Why?" And I'm like, I explained to him. He goes, "No, that's stupid. Let's just no, they'll get over it. Or let's just not put plaques in the car, whatever. Let's just keep it all under the Extreme Performance name. And I said, I don't want to. We went back and forth, and finally he gave in. And I had just hired, I think I just hired Jeff. And this is when I went in to talk to him, and we knew that we were going to rebrand it. And so I worked with the same guys I worked in, my friends in Orlando, that did the first logo for Image Driven for us, and we came up with Avant-Garde. That was, and Jeff got part of it, and then we went and looked at the definition, and the definition was like perfect for how we were creating these interiors with outside the box and new techniques and new materials, and that's kind of what Avant-Garde means, right? Mm-hmm. So we went with it, and the day Avant-Garde was born, I would say within 2 months we were booked out for a year. There was a switch there somewhere that got switched on the first couple of cars we did with the new name, and not only what we were doing was so unique, but so was our name. We got called Avant-Garde, Avant-Garden, anything you can think of, And so I think that was kind of the kick too. People didn't know what we were doing, what our name was, and so here's this 22 or 23 year veteran of the car audio world that at some point by 2012 or 2013, a lot of people had heard of me by then, right? I would go to the Knowledge Fest, or I'd go to whatever Spring Break Nationals, and hey Jeremy, how you doing? Blah blah blah. Now I'm going to Detroit, and I'm going to Columbus, and I'm standing next to a car in a lawn chair. I'm like, la di da. Nobody knows me. I don't know anybody else in this industry except for Miranda Bilt, who I'd go there with. So it was that point where we rebranded the name and called it Avant-Garde that truly turned a new career for me. It was a new career at that point. It wasn't just part of my job. It was a career, and I feel that that's where I've matured enough that I've truly built. I was more of a business side of it at that point, and I was truly looking to see how I could build the business. And so a couple of years with Avant-Garde, doing several more cars for Roadster Shop and everybody else around, we outgrew Extreme really quickly, because I told you we were booked out. We were trying to do 2 or 3 cars at once, and plus Extreme's still trying to do all the audio every day out of one bay door. And so you can pull in, it's 10,000 or 8,000 square feet, but it's one bay door at the end of the day. So we played Frogger all day, moving cars, going in between cars. It was just so inefficient. And Matt, the owner, came to me one day and said, hey, come down here. And where we are, we have like a business park, and there's like 3 or 4 buildings deep, and they're probably 500,000 square feet buildings each, and we had part of it rented. And he goes, come back here to this building. So I go back there, and he walks in, and he tosses me the keys in the air, and he goes, there you go. There's Avant-Garde's new home. And I was like, what? It's 5,000 square feet and tall ceilings, taller than we were up front, and it's just blank canvas. And I'm like, no way. I said, that's so awesome. He goes, well, come here. And there was a hole cut in the wall because whoever had it rented before had cut a hole in the wall because they must have had both spaces, I'm guessing. And so we walked through this hole in the wall, and it opens up to this huge, it's like a big 10,000 square feet, and had been half gutted already. And he turns and he said, here. He tossed me the keys. He goes, I was just kidding. This is yours. And so I went from, holy shit, I've got 5,000 square feet to myself, to having now 10,000 square feet to myself. And that's where Avant-Garde was truly born, though. That's where we kind of took our own and made it our own. Everything about us, everything about our logo, everything about our mentality. I was able to design the whole shop how I wanted it, how I thought it needed to be for efficiency, how we could grow. That it was all my brainchild basically at that point. I wasn't just in extreme performance, and I wasn't making that transition from car audio to being a trimmer or being a high-end upholstery shop. This was like somebody hand you win the lottery, and somebody hand you the space and saying, there you go. So that's
and what's your website? So like people right now, if they're trying to Google to see the shop,
it's Avant-Garde
to find the pictures.
So it would be avantgarde.com. So it's AVANT Garde, Garde, design.com. And honestly, our website sucks. We're working on that right now. We have a new online store coming. It's almost all the way done now. We're a full Recaro Southeast distributor for Recaro, so we have a full Recaro section now, and we're putting a bunch of other merch, and we have a couple of products that we're coming out with. We're selling too. So the online store is being built for our new website now. But on the social media side, probably the Instagram is probably the best way to get a hold of us at this point.
Cool.
So Avant-Garde's born really. It wasn't. We weren't somebody else's, stepchild being in an extreme. At this point, Miranda Built had moved back down south as well, and so we were a full-fledged shop. And it's so humbling, and so I get choked up actually every time I talk about this whole thing, because I never in a million years I don't know how it even happened. I got to where I was, but all I knew was that as soon as we rebuilt from scratch Avant-Garde into this new facility, the first day I ever walked in there, I walked in there in tears, because I'm like, holy shit. I've always loved what I've done. And they always say, you do what you love and you never have to work a day in your life, right? That's what they say. But now I've always had that mentality because I've always loved what I do. But now I've been handed this facility that I was able to build myself around what I wanted. And so I'm like, this is like the ultimate. And it has truly been a ride. I mean, I feel that we have taken and changed the upholstery world. And I would probably think that a lot of people would agree with me, even the people who have been doing this a long time. And I did it the same way that I won Installer of the Year, or I won anything else I've done in my life. It was by being different. It was by bringing all composites. It was by doing everything with magnets. Everything was digital, with the digital whiteboard we started with, and then the CNC, and then the laser, and then the CNC sewing machine, and our embroidery machine. I just kept adding technology, and that's kind of what really drives us, is technology. In the evenings, I don't watch TV. I never have, really. I'll come home and jump on the Google, and I'll just start looking at other industries that you wouldn't even think about, right? Whether it be the aerospace, or down here we are in South Florida, there's a ton of marine, and marine industry has a lot of, obviously, composites because wood rots, right? And so those know me. I've been using a product for several years now we call AG board. It's a composite material that I spent a lot of time, and we found it, and I've never really given up to one person. There's one person that uses it in the country now. It's Jeremy Carlson, that I gave the contact up to, but to this point I stopped giving the contacts out for everything. Well, I won't even go into that subject, but we came up with AG board, and it's the all composite, but that's the mentality. Is I found the AG board, so now everything we were able to do with MDF before, now we're doing with the AG board, because now you can soak it in water for 4 months and it never swells, or you can put it in the heat and it doesn't warp, And so that's been our mentality. We found a better product. We bought the new 3D printer. We bought a little 3D printer to start with, and we loved the technology, and we're printing little cups for the handles and the poles on the armrest, or we're printing door handles, and we knew we wanted to go bigger with it, so we bought the biggest one we could find, and we were the first one in our industry to have the big rep, which prints 40 inches by 40 inches by 40 inches. It's huge, right? And so now we're taking these interior panels to the next level. Now we're basically like a rapid prototyping facility where we are developing our own panels and printing them. So
yeah, and it's funny you say that, and I know I've made comments about you specifically in random episodes of the podcast, where I remember specifically us being in that center console class, or when we were building the center consoles, and this is before I was still hand making everything. I was the last people out of our group that didn't use a laser, right? I'm doing everything by hand, and you mosey on over to see our progress of whatever the fuck we're building, and you can kind of gauge on the part that I'm trying to make, and you run back to the laser real quick, and you literally make a template of like what I'm trying to make, and then you're like, is this what you're trying to do? And then it's you've always been one step ahead, obviously, from our industry, and a lot of it is because of the growth and the passion and just trying to better yourself, and that's trickled into our industry a lot, like with the magnets and a lot of the, the laser CNC, the regular CNC, all that stuff, automation.
Right.
I even remember, Brian and I talking about potentially getting a massive 3D printer as well, right? So it's
I
like,
remember, yeah.
all that trickles down all the way as far as,
Right.
the work that you put in to figure out how to do stuff better.
So let's back up about 2 paragraphs while you were talking ago there, and you were saying all these things that have kind of helped me go to the next level. I will have to tell you that in my hard drive, my brain, that probably the 2 things that has continually let me grow as a person and as a business would be passion, because that's what drives you, right? Passion is what drives you to want to be better. And I'm not talking about better than Gary Bell or Matt Schaeffer or whoever it is. I'm talking about being better than you were yesterday.
Of course.
That's the passion,
that's
right?
My quote every day. Yep.
Yeah. Always be better than you were the day before. And that is 100% what I live by to this day. And then behind that passion, you got to be humble, and you have to be kind, and you have to be a good person, because it's one thing to have that passion to go out there and just kick ass and be better than the next person. But if you're not a nice person or a kind person, you're going to get lost, and you're going to be just one of like everybody else, right? And so that passion is what has helped me. So now you've added that passion in with the technology, and then the new fasteners or the new materials or new machines. And I think that's truly what has elevated me in 2 careers now. And I think you guys will probably agree, the technology side is what separated me in, not separated, but made me excel in car audio, right? Like I said, back in 04, I built the Bug, and it was 04 I didn't. The Bug I didn't. The Civic I did. So the Civic was the first car I did with a CNC, my CNC router. And so that was 05 or 06, whatever we talked about, Gary.
So I remember you talking me into buying a ShopBot, and that was probably a year after that. We talked 2 or 3 times, and you're just like, shut up, you'll learn it. Don't be scared. Just like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gone down that path. Like you. Right.
And that's when you were at Alpine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember Alpine bought a ShopBot back then. So that's the one I had. And I was scared in the beginning, there was a guy that came down to visit. His name's Jimmy Walker. And when I was at the Installer Institute, I think, and he, what's the old car audio brand? It was called Ear Candy. It had the colored amps.
Oh, Linear Power.
Linear Power. So he did a bunch of stuff. And his best friend was the geek behind Linear Power. But Jimmy came down, and he had one of the original ShopBots, and he was telling me about it. I'm like, what? Huh? What are you talking about? I had no clue what he was even talking about. And I went to IWF later that year, which is a big woodworking show they have every other year in Atlanta. And we bought a CNC. We bought and I had not a clue how to turn the thing on. And that was what you were saying, when I told you just to buy it, you'll figure it out. And that was the same thing that we went through. So that whole thing, that technology and that passion and that being humble and being kind, that is what I think has made me excel, especially in the upholstery or I don't know if you even call us an upholstery shop. I don't know what you call us. And we're, like I said, we're a rapid prototyping facility, really. We do so many different things for so many different types of things that we're not just the trimmers. We're not just people who sew things, but we do that well too. So, but, the advancement and all that has definitely got us more notoriety in the upholstery world. So here I go from not knowing anybody the first couple of shows we went to, and now I'm starting to get the respect of the old guys, right? And what I mean by the old guys is, and not old, well, he is old, Tracy Weaver, the Shannon from Interiors by Shannon. And so these are the guys that I'm studying when Jeremy Miranda wanted to know if I want to do that first interior, right? I just start getting on the Google and looking and seeing who's doing what, and wow, that's cool, and I like that. But these are the guys I'm looking up to after being in the car audio industry for people looking up to me 20 some years, now I'm starting to look up to these guys because I didn't know who they were. I didn't know who Tracy Weaver was. I didn't know who Interiors by Shannon was, or Gabe's up to this point until I started just doing research, and I didn't know anything about hot rods. And this is a true statement now. I tell one of my best friends, Scotty, down here, the first time he ever met me, and he came to my shop and said, "Man, you got the dream job. You get to work on cars every day. That's so awesome." I'm like, "Listen, I don't even like cars, and truly, I'm not a car guy. Like after work,
I'm not either. Yeah,
I don't choose to work on my car. I don't have a car I work on. I could care less about cars. I got my family, and I'd rather work on my house or
me too.
my
Yep.
and RC cars, whatever I'm into. So I'm not even a car guy. So, but I had to have a job. I had to support my family, and I just happen to have passion that goes along with it. And I don't want to be like everyone else. And so I'm always trying to raise the bar or do something different. So that kind of leads us up where we are today. I mean, I know we've been at here 1 hour and 40 minutes now or something like that, but 2 hours, whatever it is, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So
Told you it'd go quick.
yeah. So
Yeah, go super quick.
so I don't know if you want me. I don't really want to get into a ton of Avant-Garde, but I will if you want me to talk a little bit more about it or current projects or anything like that. Or if you got more questions that you had kind of for me, or where you want to go with this, or if you want to wrap it up.
I think the big question is, like, you've elevated that bar, you've chosen this new path, and are you working on the next evolution? Or are you just is Avant-Garde it, and you're just going to continue to tweak it to be as good as it can be? Or do you think that there's another chapter after that?
All right, so it's good talking to you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. No, there is stuff in the works. I'm always thinking and always trying to be different, but I will tell you that Avant-Garde is it for me. And as of now, it's my brainchild. I've had some talented people along the way help me create Avant-Garde and work with, and talented employees. But at the end of the day, I was definitely the one that was designing and building the shop and making it efficient. And I was the forefront and the face that would go out and meet these people and get these jobs. And so for me to walk away from Avant-Garde would be very tough. But with that being said,
it's like leaving a kid.
It is. It really is.
At this point.
And as successful as we've been, it would be very tough to walk away and just to give it all up. It would be like giving up, right? And I'm definitely not that guy.
Nor would it be the same company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it would. Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that I am a big part of it, which I am. But at the end of the day, everybody's replaceable, right? So I don't know how that would all play out, but I don't really want to find out at the same time. But the evolution of it to this point is we are working with the highest end, in hot rod shops out there. We did a huge project last year that nobody knows about, because I can't post anything about it because I have an NDA. But we did a huge project for a company in London. It's a big company, and you're about to know about it soon. So it's projects like that are allowing us to think bigger now. So we're moving on to, I think you may have seen recently, I was just in Detroit. I got back a couple of days ago, and that was the first time that I've been to work with one of the big three. So I would think that is the next level. We will definitely not give up we definitely won't give up our share of what we do in the upholstery world. We'll continue to grow it. We'll continue to evolve. We'll continue to find new materials, build more cars, find better employees or more employees, and become bigger. But there is the next chapter, and the next chapter you'll see, I think, is going to head towards the rapid prototyping facility, like I was just saying, and how we're able to take our new facility, which is the 3D printing, or excuse me, the 3D scanning, and turn that into the CAD side of it now. And that's what appeals to the company that we're working with in Detroit now, is the fact that we can take their original CAD data from the vehicle they designed and built, manufactured hundreds of thousands of cars from. We have that whole CAD data now, and we're able to redesign parts of that interior now and give them something that they can't do in-house, because, let me back up, they can do it in-house. Obviously they can. They can't do it in-house as quickly as we can, and they can't do it in-house because of budgets, and it would take them so long to figure out who was going to do it, how they were going to do it, and set up a facility for them to do it, that they are using us to take their product and bring it to auto shows and to show what the future could be for one of these manufacturers. And so I've seen things this last week that is 2025 and 2026 versions of cars that are not out, or not even thought about at this point. They're clay model interiors, that full clay models that look like you could set in and drive it home tomorrow. You know, that I was blown away. I'm like, what am I even doing here? I'm like, holy cow! You know, this is definitely the next level. So here we go again, always trying to raise that bar, trying to look to the future and to keep growing.
Yeah, there's going to be
evolving.
a future. There's going to be more levels. It's clearly along the lines of what you're already saying, whether you know it now or you're going to know it in 10 years. This is the stepping stones. And one of the quotes that I kind of created along my journey is availability creates opportunity, right? So
that's right.
When you make yourself available at events, whatever it is, you're creating this opportunity where you're going to create contacts, and those contacts are going to give you opportunity, right? And that opportunity is going to facilitate and, you know, almost mold your future, right? You just don't know it until you know
That's
it.
right.
Right.
And so, perfect example, just exactly what you said. The reason I was in Detroit last week was because of an opportunity.
Yep.
As you both know, I have taught some classes at Mobile Solutions, and I would like to say probably the brainchild behind the hot rod class at Mobile Solutions. Brian and I kind of came up at the beginning after the Nova and a couple of those cars, and we kind of put together, like, let's kind of cater to the hot rod side of it, right? The car audio side is great, but let's open the doors to something bigger. So we started doing some of the hot rod class as well. Working with Brian and out there, I was introduced to Scott Whitehead. And if you don't know who Scott Whitehead is, he ran probably the baddest car audio shop ever in was it Tacoma? Or Bellevue, Washington. And right outside Microsoft. And that's where Brian Schmidt left Rockford for and went to work up there with him, and they've become great friends and have been friends for years. But I would have never met Scott Whitehead, and I would have never got that call 2 months ago from Scott Whitehead saying, hey, I've got this opportunity, you know, and it all because of Brian and Hot Rod class, just like you said.
That would have never happened if you didn't go to that class.
You're exactly right.
Yep. That's how my whole history has been structured. And I've just always tried to keep that in mind and be available and network, meet people, because, again, that's how the opportunities come.
Yep, absolutely. So it's been a hell of a ride. I'll tell you that. And I think in this month, Wheel Hub Magazine just came out, and about 3 months ago, they came out and did a photo shoot for us, and they wanted to do a feature on us. We advertise in their magazine, and we've had probably 6, 7, 10 cars featured in the magazines with our interiors on them, from the Roadster Shop and Miranda Built or Dutch Boys or whatever these companies our wheel dealers work for. And so they wanted to do a feature on us and how we're kind of different. And I'm like, all right. So they came out, they hired a photographer out of Tampa, actually, that specializes in shooting large facilities and like commercial buildings for Architecture magazine and stuff like that. And so he came out, spent a day with us, and shot a bunch of pictures of us. And then about a month and a half ago, Rodney from Wheel Hub called and said, "You ready for it? You want to do an interview?" And I said, "Sure." And so it went a lot like our podcast did tonight. I talked a lot, and he listened, and he learned just what I just talked about tonight. It was basically the same story for about 2 or 3 hours. And at the end, he was like, "I don't know what to say, honestly." He goes, "I've been doing this for quite a few years now, and you've got a pretty unique story. How you've kind of just evolved, and you switch gears and you switch whatever." He goes, "That's really cool." And so about 3 weeks ago now, we got the first copy of Wheel Hub magazine in. And Wheel Hub did a 24-page article on Avant-Garde.
Jeez.
It's 24 full pages in one magazine about my career, about me, and about Avant-Garde. And so it's things like that has kept me humble, because that you can't buy. You can't just say, well, I shouldn't say that. I'm sure money buys anything, right? I'm sure you could go for whatever money and buy 24 pages of magazine. It would cost a lot of money, right? But in my head, it's priceless, right? Because you had to have my career, my background to get that story out of it, right? So, and without that story, there wouldn't have been an article. They wouldn't have wanted to publish about us. So, but it was after 28 years of doing what I do, that was probably one of the most humbling things that's ever happened to me. Until you read 24 pages about what somebody thinks about you, it's one thing for me to sit here and tell you about my career, right? But for you to listen to it and then come back 2 months later and have 24 pages written about me, it's pretty humbling. And at the end of the article, it says, "We don't know the future of Jeremy or Avant-Garde, but he is in the likes of the Chip Fooses and he listed like 3 or 4 people in the hot rod industry that has changed the hot rod industry, right?" And so he used my name and company to, I guess, put me in the same realm as them. And I think that's what really did it. I was like, holy shit. Like, we all know Chip Foose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
I heard of him.
To be even in a sentence with him, and he's the cover of the magazine, a Jaguar he did last year for SEMA. So it's him driving the Jaguar from the top, like from a drone view straight down on him. And then so here's Chip Foose on the cover of this magazine, and here's an article, 24 pages about me in this magazine. So I think I've reached up pretty high, and definitely at an altitude that I am 100% okay with if it ended tomorrow.
You're not supposed to say that. You're not supposed to say you're okay with it.
I know.
The whole podcast story.
But I would be, just as far as in my brain, in my brain,
yeah.
With my passion and my drive, no, I would never let that happen, of course. Yeah. But if something were to happen ever, and I've reached a point where my name was in with all these hot rod builders that have changed. It was the Boyd Connington. It was exactly the automotive industry, and
that's the big thing, not the car audio industry, the automotive industry.
Right, and that's what's definitely changed. Is we know the car audio industry is small, right? Mm-hmm. And so once you open those doors and you go into the car industry, it's a different realm. The upholstery industry, I would say, is pretty small as well. I like to say 10 or 12 people in the world that are at the level that Avant-Garde is. And I'm not being cocky. I'm just kind of stating its facts after all these years where we're doing what we do. And so, but once you talk about Ford and Chevy and Dodge and Lexus, Tesla, that's a different story altogether. So you're talking huge. So there's the answer. We are moving forward, but we're not forgetting where we come from.
Yeah, I can only imagine getting acknowledged by a manufacturer, right? Because people make the dumb comments to me all the time, like, do you think Elon's seen anything you've done in a Tesla? And I'm like,
Right.
absolutely not. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's the last thing he would fucking ever see. But
Right,
to
but
actually
he
get
may.
acknowledged and then be like, wow, that's pretty cool. You know what I'm saying?
Right, absolutely. To be, to put your name with Elon Musk, that's
Right. Yeah.
pretty awesome, and that's it. That's what gives me the drive, though. Is it's the magazine articles like that, and using my name with the same name as somebody else, or just that passion. Just never lose that passion. I've always said
But
that.
I will
keep
say the
learning.
beautiful thing about our industry is, like, when you fucking rip that ping pong table apart, you're thinking outside the box, right?
Right.
And the problem is with a lot of people that work with manufacturers and design, they went to school for that, and they don't have the same outside the box engineering background to a car that we have, right? And one of the guys that used to work like under me, and he fucking knew nothing when he started
Right.
working with me, is Dan.
At Ford now, right?
Yeah, and he's at Ford now. And the
Yeah.
whole reason that happened is because he was doing his CAD work at a facility that I guess they have in Canada. Yeah.
Tech
What's it
shop,
called?
wasn't it?
Yeah,
Maybe
it's some sort of
Tech
tech
shop or
shop
something like
where
that.
there's like all these different machines that it's
Mhm.
like a gym membership, right? You
It is.
pay,
I
and then
think-
you can,
yeah.
you can go there. And he was making something for a car,
Yep.
and one of the head people from Ford was there and saw him making something, and he was like, "Oh, so what are you making?" And he's just like describing it, and he's seeing the way that he's engineering this completely different than all the people at Ford, right? So generally, if you're going to work at Ford in that department, you're going to go to school and you're going to have a degree in X, and he just took a chance on Dan because he's an outside the box thinker who
That's it.
comes with a
And
completely
that's-
different perspective, right?
And that's
So-
why he got that gig.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
got the gig, and as far as I know, he's flourishing, and he's had like a lot of very important like stuff that he's done has already been patented by Ford, like the way shifters fold down and shit, and it's really cool because like you're coming from this background of putting in radios and speakers to now literally controlling like how an interior is going to look and function for
Yep.
millions and millions of people.
What you think
I'm-
about those? Oh,
Go ahead, Gary.
sorry. Oh, I was gonna say, if you think about all the engineers that went through school and they have this book background and they know CAD really well, but they're not necessarily the hands-on take a car apart type guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the good news about the car audio guys in general for that educational path is that we've all seen how every manufacturer goes about putting a car together and how it comes apart, and that evolution each of those manufacturers has had over the years. But like, I mean, you remember tolerances on an 88 Camaro door sill, like, I mean, that was
Or,
like,
or
hey,
lack of.
yeah, let me give a 1-inch slot to, you got a 1-inch moving target to put a screw into. A lot of that stuff's evolved, but when you got started, as soon as you knew how to take a Civic door panel apart, you could figure out really easy how an Accord door panel came apart. And when a Toyota graduated to a Lexus, it's like you find that commonality that the same engineers were engineering those cars, and they have the same techniques and the same ways, and the clip is the same, and it takes the same amount of pressure to pull on it before it gives you that magic
Yep.
pop and comes off. And so especially now when you go back after all of those years and now you're designing how this interior goes in and comes apart, you're able to add in all those touches and know 100% what worked and what tolerances were good and looked good and which ones weren't and that kind of stuff. So it's quite a unique hands-on education as opposed to just a strict book learned.
Yeah, and it's more of an evolution than an education, I would say, because without us knowing those tolerances over the years, you're right that a lot of that evolved, and then you think about these engineers that like you said, but and probably the biggest drawback to some of these engineers that went to school and the work at the big three now are the fact that they went, like you just said, they went to school for design digitally, right? And we just dealt with this last week when I was in Detroit. All they see is a small tunnel, because that's all they know is how to take that mouse and click and make that line and turn that into a 3D model, right? they don't know that's going to mount, or if you can even get a screwdriver in that opening, or if that snap is even going to work, because they've never lived that, And so that's what makes it different to people that think outside the box, like Matt said, is now you can take this limited CAD background that I have, and you take the background I have in car audio, and you put the whole thing together as a package, and we're pretty valuable when it comes to people like the corporations, like the big three, because now people like the three of us, or our group or whatever, is we know a lot. We don't just know one thing, and that's very important. And the guy so I had a guy fly down 3 weeks ago, and he is the director of design for the company I went to see. When he was coming, I was telling the guys, I've been talking to this guy on the phone, but I was telling my guys, like, man, I feel like this guy is more excited to see me than I am to see him. And it was like a weird feeling, right? And so he came down, we spent the day together, and he physically almost told me that at lunch. He's like, Jeremy, I've never been this excited to come to a shop and visit somebody. This is awesome. And then when we went up there, and I spent 3 days up there and designing, and I may have been in a building or two over from where Dan is, your friend Matt. So the corporation is so big, though. Like, we had to get some CAD data from the manufacturer, and the hoops that he had to jump through to get as part of this CAD data, it was crazy. I mean, I'm now a vendor for this manufacturer, and that's not easy to get, and they did it in 3 days just so we could get the CAD data, because without being a vendor for this manufacturer, they wouldn't sign over the CAD data to me. So basically the CAD data I was handed last week when I was in Detroit, I could build this entire vehicle with. It's every 3D model of every part of the entire car, minus the transmission and the engine, basically. So that comes with a level of trust, obviously. I'm not going to go sell that. I'm not going to do anything else with it. But when I left, I felt really good. Like, they were pretty impressed with what we bring to the table, and it goes back to how fast we can do something and how quick we can make changes. That was the biggest thing. It doesn't take 5 meetings and 4 engineers to change the size of a bolt, And so that's why they're able to hand projects like this off to outside people, is because it can get done so quick, limited budget compared to what they're used to up there.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
I can't either. The budget at the end of the day, I can't imagine some of those budgets. But it was a great experience. And while we were and we just talked about how he was more happy to see me than I was to him when he came down. I just got a text 4 minutes ago, and it's funny and the guy says, "How are you doing, brother? I already miss you. I can't wait to get this thing going, and I cannot wait to see what the future holds. We already have 3 more projects in queue." Wow. So that was at 10:58 tonight from a corporate guy. Normally 8 to 5 corporate guys texting me at 10:58 at night how excited he is to work with us in the future, and that is what keeps us going.
All because you went to Mobile Solutions
See
training.
That's it.
See how important Mobile Solutions trainings are.
That is
everybody go to Mobile. Everybody go to Mobile Solutions and work for the big 3. So no,
it's
it was
just that easy.
It's just that easy. So, but so that's my story. I know we went way over. I don't know how much you're going to cut out of this or what you're going to do with it. But
zeros. Nothing is ever cut out, by the way, for the people listening. The only time things are cut out if people say something that is not good and they don't want it out there, that's cut out. But other than that,
right.
everything goes out. And there, again, zero prep ever. It's all natural, like a phone conversation, like we're catching up.
It sure was. We didn't call ahead of time, that's for sure. So we had texts figuring out when it was going to be, but that was about it. So we've been trying to do this for several months. I know that, but we're all so busy. But so I said I was all done, but I do have one more thing to throw in there. I absolutely have never and never will take credit for my whole career. I have been surrounded by and put people in the position to be surrounded by very talented people and very good people over the years. You two being included in our group that we have. without people like you and without our phone calls, Gary, what do you think of this? Hey, look at this. And I'm sure I've seen a lot of things of Gary's that nobody else really has. And I know he's seen a lot of things of mine on the CAD side that I've never shared with anybody else. But it's the friends like that, and it's the relationships that I've built along the way that has definitely allowed me to excel and to bounce ideas off to like Gary or you, Matt, or whatever it is, and kind of go down that path to keep going, because it can get, if you had to work by yourself all day every day in a little shop, and I know, Matt, you were having that problem when you were at your last job. Yep. You get burnt out, and you lose your creativity because you're doing the same thing over and over again. So without people like you guys, and then like other people in my industry that I've talked to over the years, and my friend Ian, I would definitely not be where I am today. And just to finish up with that whole thing, and I put this in every magazine article you can ever read in mine, and without my family, none of this would have happened. I would have lost drive and passion a long time ago. If I wouldn't have been supported by my family this whole time, I won't tell you it's all been roses. There's been lots of all-nighters and late nights, and I've worked Christmas Day a couple times to get things done, and it's not always been pretty. But at the end of the day, my family are the ones that hold the door open for me when I come home and allow me to keep doing what I do. So I will end it with that. That's I have to give credit where credit's due. So if you guys got any more questions for me, or however you want to end it.
I definitely want to make sure that that we all appreciate you and your journey and everything that you've done and keeping us inspired. And I don't think that there's many people that get the respect internally that you do. And I hope you know that.
Oh, I appreciate that. It means a ton. It really does, because, you don't know sometimes, you kind of live your life and you go 100 miles an hour all day long, and you don't truly know what people really think or what, I live my life, and I try to live my life to the fullest, and I try to be the most humble person I can be and be the most straightforward guy. But at the end of the day, the last thing I'd ever want is somebody, talking shit or something like that. And if they were talking shit, I would really want to know the reason why, because I usually never put myself in a position for that ever to happen. So it really feels good to hear, come from somebody like you, Gary, that somebody I obviously respect and have for a long time. That's good to hear. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, you've definitely impacted I would say the industry as a total. I mean, I wouldn't say more than because you probably know, but at the same time, like, more than just when it comes to most of the fabrication techniques, practices, like I said, you're always staying ahead of the curve, and obviously all of that always trickles down. And there's no doubt in my mind that at some point you're going to have to make a tough decision in your life, right? Kind of like what we alluded to, because there's no doubt in my mind that a manufacturer will be calling at some point in the future, because you just have this unique skill set and knowledge that you can't learn at a college, right? Nobody can ever learn at a college. And you just bring something different, and that different is invaluable, right? And it's tough to find people who are, just have their head completely on their shoulders. As we know, there's right. So many good talents that have been wasted at points in their career. And not a lot of talents that have undenying drive and passion. And obviously you're one of those people, right? You're special. So,
right. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's definitely pushed the industry and pushed everybody in that industry to do a better job, both for themselves, for their customers, and just to kind of help mold and shape the industry into something that is more respectable than it was before you got here. So,
right. That's awesome. I always try to hold myself in a high position, because I always want to be like, if anybody was to talk about our industry or the upholstery industry, I would want people to think that, that I would be a good representation of who or what we are, because of how I do value my family and my friends and my career. It's a package. Matt, you were just saying that. You kind of put everything together, and at the end of the day, it takes that all to be different, right? You can go halfway there and be a super talented guy, but at the end of the day, if you can't be that good guy or that good person, you make bad choices in your life, that will give you a detour really quick to get into the top. So, but
And Gary, I don't
So,
even know if you know this, but this podcast could have been entirely different because when I was making the decision to go to sound effects, I was literally a millimeter away from working with Jeremy.
that's right.
3-4 years ago. It was
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest decisions of my life, really, because you have this opportunity to work with the best in one of the best shops ever, doing something different, right? So, like, for me, it was just like gravitating away from the audio, mobile electronic side more towards fabrication and obviously Jeremy's niche. So I feel like that's what made it the hardest decision for me. But this podcast could have been entirely different, right?
Yeah,
Who
for
knows
sure.
what I
Yeah.
would be,
Which
Right,
which
and-
is one great question also, Jeremy. Do you miss the audio side? I mean, I know you're doing some audio in the interiors, but like
No.
not that satisfaction of turning the system on for the first time and
No. I
getting to
miss
hear a
all
few
that.
songs
No,
and-
I do miss that. I do miss that. I don't miss the retail of the car audio industry.
Oh yeah.
I miss great sound, and that's what got me in this industry to start with. And I miss going to the car audio shows, which are no longer. But I don't miss the retail of car audio. That's for sure. But we're trying to make hot rods sound good again. We're trying to make them great again. So we're working on it. I've had some really great employees. David Cruz was down here with me, and he's a sound quality guy, and so we pushed that for a little bit. And then when we played Switch with him and Matt Vow, Matt brings a tremendous amount of, obviously, fabrication, but he's got that passion for audio too, and for fidelity and great sound. And one of my newest hires with Matt Vow was Charles Brazil out of Jacksonville, and Charles has been a breath of fresh air for sure. His personality is contagious, and he's a happy-go-lucky person like myself, and he's got that passion for sound quality too, and he's the one going home at night and finding more about amplifiers or processors, whatever it be. He's got that passion, that drive. Him and Matt both do. But that goes back to surround yourself with good people, though.
Yeah.
I was going to end it with a question for you guys earlier. I was trying to think of one because I'm sure that has not been done that at the end of that way. But what I had come up with wasn't anything that was valuable. And I was going to get Mexican food for my wife and I, which is still sitting on the counter, and I didn't finish that thought of trying to come up with a question. But so let's wrap it up. Unless you got more questions for me or anything else.
The only question I
could go
have
on
for you
hours
is
about Avant-Garde here, but
the only question I have for you is what is your Mona Lisa so far? And it could be something old, it could be something new, but what's the one project that you're just like, there's some part of that I'm just always married to?
my daughters.
No, come on. That's the easy answer. What?
That's my
project?
cop out.
Yeah.
All
that's
right,
the
you had to
easy
say
cop-out.
automotive, Friday.
I would have said the same thing.
God, yeah, put me on a spot, huh? I'm probably gonna say Road Rage that we did for the Roadster shop. That was the '70 Camaro, wide body Camaro.
Let me rephrase the question to be more specific. What's the one thing that you've built that you would love to just own?
That car. That's
Okay.
the car. That wide body car. Yeah, because I don't like cars, but I love that car. Yeah, I'm pretty tied to that car. That was one of my favorite for sure. Besides the fact that we did that car in 17 days, but it was that there's more reasons. The sentimental value of I've become very best friends with Jeremy Gerber, who owns the Roadster shop, and that project was one of the biggest ones we did together for the first time, and he was totally blown away, and so that car means a lot to me too. So for my future and everything else, because of that relationship I built with him. So
Love it.
Gary, one last
Availability
question? No?
creates opportunity.
Absolutely,
Nice.
100%. And what I always say at the end of every mobile solutions class I'm talking is never stop learning.
Yep.
Yep.
If you feel that you're done learning in the car audio industry or the upholstery industry, you might as well go find another industry to be in. I mean, I'm
Yep.
Gary. How long you been doing this now? 30 years?
Something like that. Yep.
Long
We say
time.
it every time, every day. Smarter today than I was yesterday.
That's it. And if you're not, hang it up, right?
Yep.
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 So,
Yep.
because you will not evolve. Because if you don't evolve, you will never succeed and you'll never go any further.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to
So,
make mistakes because you're going to learn. That's the best way to learn is from a mistake. As much as we want to
And
avoid
stay
them,
out.
they make us
Obviously, stay
better.
out of your comfort zone, right? Because, like you said, with, the biggest pivotal moment of your career, I think, is saying, "Yeah, I'll build that fucking interior," but you're just like, well, you hadn't really thought about it, and now you got to fucking build the interior. You know what I'm saying?
that's it.
Like, that's the same kind of things that I do, where I back myself into this fucking corner where I have to do something that I haven't done before. And,
Yep.
that's just my way of dealing with that and becoming married to doing something that I just haven't done before. And
And
that's where you're going to learn.
that's 100
You're
that's
going to
100%
fail.
true. Yeah.
You're going to progress, and
Yeah. I mean,
that's the only way you get better.
Gary's the same way. Like Gary, look, when you left Alpine, went to work for that display company. You never built displays before. You mean you had, but through Alpine and stuff like that. But so it's you got to keep learning. You can't stop. You have to. And I would say that's probably the reason. Talking more about the upholstery industry now is that a lot of reasons why some other shops that have super talented people or super talented person who owns it, but over the years they've not evolved. They've not taken that next step, and they're stuck in their ways from the 1990s or the early 2000s, and they're still building the same way they were doing back then. And
I think that happens in more industries and more worlds than one, and especially what we talked about tonight. You get that same scenario in the OEM world where the guy that's running the design was the design department at a big three manufacturer is probably one of the guys that was one of the designers at one point, and he has his way that was instilled in him, and so he pushes that upon everybody else in the same way that's how car audio shops in general work, is that
that's right.
The guy with the most seniority is the one that's pushing what he knows and what's worked for him, and that's why there are a lot of shops that are like, oh, we don't need DSPs, and we don't
Right.
we're not
Yeah, we didn't need those in the 90s. Yeah. So, but I know that the name of your podcast, and to wrap this whole thing up, it is definitely the old school car audio that got me where I'm sitting right here talking to you on this podcast tonight. Because without that, I'd be building houses somewhere in Kansas probably, or somewhere. And so it was definitely that passion and that drive from the young Jeremy from Kansas that wanted that better sound and to win that next competition and to build that better amp rack or whatever it was back then. So it was definitely the old school car audio that got me where I am sitting here today.
Yeah, and still an inspiration to all the car audio guys out there. If you guys, obviously, one more time on the website, Avant-Garde.
Yeah, AVANT GARDE design.com. And then I think it's just type Instagram or Facebook, either one. But yeah.
Yeah,
and then
you'll see stuff that'll inspire. The car audio guys out there should be aspiring to build panels the way that Jeremy and his team build panels.
Yep.
And just the engineering integrity of them alone is enough to be inspired by.
Yeah, and it's the integrity in the panels that's what has kind of separated too. I won't go into it, but I did get a $80,000 interior job by a potential client picking up one of my panels that was at a shop that we had finished already, and the whole interior was laid out on the floor on moving blankets.
Yeah, I was about to make that comment to say that, you know, when you can take a picture of the interior outside the car, like put together, I think that kind of says a lot about, you know, just the quality and design and execution.
So this customer had been having his car built for a while, and the owner of the shop was like, "You got to use this place in Florida. You got to use this place in Florida." And he's like, "No, they're too expensive. They're too expensive. They're too expensive." And he happened to be on a shop on a Saturday afternoon and came through there. And the owner was walking him around. He was like, "Well, this is one of the interiors out of that shop in Florida." He's like, "What?" He said, "Yeah." And so he picks up, the owner of the shop picks up one of these panels and hands it to him. And he looks, he goes, "Man, this is a nice panel." You could tell it's like an OEM rigid panel, you know, wrapped in leather. And he flips it over, and on the back side, the leather is cut perfect with a straight edge all the way around the edge. It's not just a bunch of glue on the back of it. And then the whole back of the panel is painted black. So you go from black leather on the front to black paint on the back. And the guy hands the panel back to the owner of the shop and says, "Well, if a guy can do this good on the front of a panel, on the back of a panel, he's good enough to do the front of my panels then." And so he was pretty impressed with, you know, the panel itself, and then just the fact that we took the time to paint the back of it black and trim it all out, and that's what got us the $85,000 job.
Sounds
so
like
that
a
was the
pickup line
Catalina.
to me.
Yeah, that was the Catalina. It's happened.
I remember.
You know,
I remember interviewing you, Jeremy, probably 15, 16 years ago for Car Audio and Electronics. And I
yeah, that's
remember
still
you
on
saying
YouTube.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
it's still on YouTube
Yeah.
somewhere. You can probably
Yeah.
go find it. But
Yep.
and I remember you making a statement when I asked you, you know, what would be your advice for anybody out there? And your advice was make the backside of your panels look as good as the front.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's as nice behind the scenes.
My guys hate me sometimes. It will be 4:00 in the morning, 2 days before a car's got to go to SEMA, and we're wrapping panels. They're like, can we just paint this when it comes back? I'm like, absolutely not. We'll do it right now. You know, I don't. It's not an option. You know, it's not an option to cut corners. And I'd rather eat hours as a business and turn the car out that I know it doesn't need to come back for anything. Or if ever had to go to Gary or go to you, Matt, to have service done on it, if you were to take it apart, you'll be just impressed with the backside of yours, the front side. So it's never an option.
Well, I do remember a time, maybe 4:30 in the morning at Mobile Solutions, in which you're laying in a puddle of resin, doing a fiberglass layup on a side skirt, in which you take a bath in acetone just to get all the resin off your arm hair.
I remember that. Oh man, that was a bad night.
Shit.
And I was sick. I remember that.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that going into that golf cart build, I had told everybody this is a terrible idea.
And then the next morning, you know, we go to bed at, 5 in the morning. And then the next morning, Gary's in there at like 7 in the morning in the sanding room with a fucking grinder.
No, that wasn't a sanding room. That was the paint booth, Matt. That was not a sanding room.
And I don't even think you're wearing a respirator. And
he wasn't.
Just fiber.
I was.
No, you weren't. I have a picture. You were not wearing a respirator.
I was wearing I was fully suited, wearing a respirator.
You
gloves,
looked albino
taped.
because you were completely white. Oh my god, that was one of the greatest memories I ever have.
I don't know if that was the greatest memory or not, but man, that golf cart project was not one of my best decisions to be a part of.
And then I remember Kat's holding the resin. And he's like, "Oh, it's not kicking." Oh man!
Never trust purple. Was it purple or pink? What color
pink.
was the?
It was pink.
Never
it was like
trust pink catalyst.
Yeah, I think somebody poured like Pepto-Bismol on the resin.
Yeah, it was not hardener. I know that. But.
All right. Well, that's a fun one to end it on. I know you
fantastic.
two have to be tired. Thanks for doing this.
No
I know
worries.
It was a chore to get the three of us together with our schedules lately. I'd like to apologize to the podcast listeners for how long it's been since we put out an episode, but we're ready to get back on track, and hopefully this was a heck of a kickoff. I can't think of a better guest and somebody that, again, is more respected in the industry and done more to make everybody better. So
I just can't wait to see where you're at in 10 years. That's going to be fun.
Retired.
No.
Just kidding.
Excellent.
So, all right. Well, guys, thank you. Truly humbling to have me on here and tell my story and for everybody to hear. I am the first to answer any questions on social media, messenger, text me, phone number. I'll give my phone number to anybody if you ever got questions. Anybody listening.
Don't say that on the podcast.
So,
We're
yeah.
going to have to cut that out, by the way.
Yeah.
It goes through Gary's cell phone first, but it will come to me eventually. But all right, guys.
555-1212.
That's it. So, all right, guys. It's been fun. I love you both. I'll talk to you soon and be good.
All right.
Appreciate it. Thanks again for the bottle.
See you, buddy.
You bet. Take care. Bye.
And I